A long and loud cry rang out from Kai Yang, matching his body's bloodthirsty beast-like appearance. Kai Yang's cry easily reached the clouds, echoing continuously throughout the mountain valley. Bastards of the blood group, come and fight with me. This was a call to battle, a flagrant provocation. I am here and I am waiting for you. He didn't care if those words would bring him trouble. After all, before Nu Lang died, he had also given away his position with his dying howl. Although the mountain valley only covered an area of several dozen miles in radius, in this dead quiet night, you were easily able to hear the slightest of sounds. So those people were most likely already rushing towards them. At this moment, the safest choice would be to leave the area. After fighting 3 battles, one after another, and killing 5 people, Kai Yang's world qi was greatly depleted, whilst his body had also received many wounds, both light and serious in nature. How could he confront people from the blood group in this state? Leaving that place and recovering his strength before finding an opportunity to get rid of them was without a doubt the best option. But Kai Yang couldn't leave. Rather, he would not leave. The reason being his strength had reached its peak, and if he left, his heart would become reluctant towards the idea of battling stronger opponents. He had decided he would live his life with an immovable will. If it weren't for his persistence, he would just be a simple person at the initial element boundary 4th level. With the enemies moving towards Kai Yang at full speed, they arrived at his location quickly. However, upon doing so, they were highly surprised. All his efforts were for the simple goal of leaving Xianxia time to meditate and recover without any disturbances. The strength of this group from the blood group was much higher than those who were from Stormhouse. Most of them were cultivators of the separation and reunion boundaries. Cultivators at this level could easily kill Kai Yang. It would be like killing an ant. But their strength was currently being sealed by the 9-Cloud 8 lock seal, so their present strength couldn't be estimated. Hearing Kai Yang's howl, Xianxia opened her eyes suddenly. Her heart, which was filled with regret, was finally able to relax. He has not died. He has not died. Xianxia almost wanted to cry. She had been worrying about Kai Yang's safety and feared that he would never return and that she would lose him forever. His strength was far too low and opposing party had a lot of people. How could he possibly be able to resist them all? After Kai Yang departed, Xianxia had been constantly regretting letting him leave and scolding herself, lamenting over the fact that he was risking his life for her. Yet she couldn't help him at all. But looking at her own condition, which had yet to even stabilize, it wasn't good. When Kai Yang walked out, she wasn't able to block him. Since she was the one who had brought him to this place, involving him in such a life-threatening situation, Xianxia felt extremely guilty. She was such a pure lady, thinking that all of this was her fault. She didn't even consider the possibility that the people from the blood group and Stormhouse were here to pursue Kai Yang. In other words, the main cause of this entire debacle was Kai Yang. However, at that moment Xianxia finally felt relieved, because Kai Yang was safe and his voice contained traces of his excitement, along with a fearless will to engage in battle. Although she didn't know what he was facing at present, Xianxia thought that she could only try to recover her strength as soon as possible and then go and help him. Save him. On the other side of Mountain Valley, both when Fei Chun, who was hurrying to dissolve the Yin Qi from the 9-Cloud 8 lock, and Long Hui heard Kai Yang's howl. When he heard that sound, when Fei Chen's brows wrinkled, his concentration broke and he spat out a mouthful of blood. That animal! When Fei Chen angrily cursed, because he had been at a crucial moment when he had become agitated by the howl. As a result, he even received internal injury. Lord One, how was the process of undoing the sealing? Long Hui asked like he was concerned. When Fei Chun shook his head slowly, it doesn't look too good. This seal has surpassed my expectations and experience. I don't know whose disciple she is, or how was she able to arrange such a powerful seal. The 3 Yin Qi chains didn't just lock his Qi flow in his meridians, but also locked his Dantian. This caused his strength to only reach as high as the Qi transformation stage's 3rd stage. And because of his consumption a few moments ago, it fell again by a few levels. When Fei Chun was fuming and he wished he could kill Kai Yang and that female over and over again. A true element 5th boundary master had unexpectedly been tricked by those 2 juniors. When had he ever been subjected to such shame? Lord, when you don't need to worry. Just now he has dared to expose himself, so he will surely die. Long Hui looked quite self-assured. The corner of his mouth even carried a sneer. When Fei Chun was silent, because he knew the meaning of Kai Yang's howl. That howl was not the desperate howl of person meeting his end. Rather, it was a howl that contained an overwhelming urge to fight. But he was a trivial initial element boundary fourth stage disciple. Why would he behave so wildly? Due to this, when Fei Chun thought something wasn't quite right, but he didn't take the matter to heart, thinking that Kai Yang was in an animalistic state, so it didn't matter anyway, he was going to die either way. In the mountain valley, everyone had different thoughts regarding this situation, while outside the mountain valley there was an old man flying rapidly through the air. The old man was breathing heavily and no world chi fluctuations could be felt, making it impossible to sense his strength. But his speed was very fast. Within the blink of an eye, he was able to cover a distance of over a couple thousand feet. The old man seemed very worried and anxious. Looking up at the sky, he felt extremely regretful. Went wrong, something has gone wrong. My child, you opened the seal ahead of time. The old man was muttering while dashing forwards. This old man was the contribution hall's treasurer, Meng Wuya. While muttering this, Meng Wuya felt really ashamed. He had completely lost the face of his entire family. That night he was earnestly trying to convince his disciple not to come to this place where 9 Indu crystals gathered. The promotion to the true element boundary had nothing to do with gathering of the 9 Indu crystals. At the time Xianxia had also agreed like a clever and understanding child. That had caused Meng Wuya to become elated. Xianxia had also prepared many dishes and also several pots of good wine at that moment. On one hand, Meng Wuya was eating and drinking while discrediting Kai Yang on the other hand. He was telling her to stay as far away as possible from him. Meng Wuya had seen with his own eyes that his disciple cared deeply about Kai Yang. Although it wasn't to the degree of love between a man and a woman, it was a type of loving care. This wasn't a good sign and made Meng Wuya want to cut this love down at this budding stage. For so many years, his beloved disciple had always been intelligent and obedient. Meng Wuya felt she was like his treasure and didn't want anyone to come near her. He was always fearful for her because her thoughts were extremely pure and she didn't even understand that there were people that were evil. Meng Wuya worried that if Kai Yang had evil intentions, what would he do if his beloved apprentice was enticed by him? Youth, it's then when love was always ignorant. Once his apprentice was enticed, it would become a difficult matter to manage. So Meng Wuya harbored evil intentions towards them. His skin was thick and he was always a shameless fellow. Although in his heart he was ashamed, but in his mouth he always had bad words for Kai Yang. That he was lustful in nature, he was a heartless fellow. His head was always filled with immoral thoughts. He was an evil person, etc. Meng Wuya had also spoken words of warning towards Xianxia. He seriously told her that this kind of person should not be respected and should be kept as far away as possible. Meng Wuya didn't realize that while he was speaking his eyes were starting to blur because of dishes in front of him. And when he woke up, time had passed, a long time had passed. The dishes were full of a certain compounding drug made by Xianxia. Being plotted against by his own beloved disciple. Meng Wuya wanted to cry but didn't have any tears. Losing so shamelessly, he realized that something was not right. Meng Wuya was so worried about his disciple that he didn't even think about washing his face. He directly rushed from Sky Tower Pavilion to the valley at full speed. He had felt extremely regretful this morning, knowing that the image of Kai Yang in front of his disciple was so good and he was inexpensively violating her image of Kai Yang. Wasn't this asking for trouble? Although his disciple had a lot of treasures on her and could easily avoid many dangers, here in Black Wind Mountain, there are a lot of formidable demonic beasts. If she wasn't careful, wasn't there a chance of her being eaten? If he would have been with her, there wouldn't be any need to worry about these things. Bad mouth, bad mouth. Meng Wuya wished he could slap himself on face several times. From a place 10 miles away from where 9 Indu crystal gathered, Meng Wuya was able to feel the coldness transmitting from that side. He stopped in mid-air and looked around anxiously. He saw that in the mountain valley Yin Chi was trapped by an invisible energy field and was unable to escape. After seeing this, Meng Wuya's heart finally relaxed. The 9 Clouds 8 lock seal has been activated. That means my disciple arrived here safely. Loudly exhaling. It doesn't look like there is any trouble. Meng Wuya gasped heavily. God only knows that for the past few days while hurrying along how anxious he felt, as if something had gone horribly wrong. After a little while, Meng Wuya arrived outside the mountain valley, but he didn't go in. With rapt attention he was looking towards the mountain valley. But the density of yin qi inside was too high, and he was unable to see or hear anything. Even his divine senses were unable to search inside. Since the 9 Cloud 8 lock seal had been activated, this means that his disciple must have started the process. He should just calmly wait for the good news, for her success. Because of the law's binding, people on the inside were unable to come out and people on the outside were unable to go inside. Although Meng Wuya was able to break this seal, but if he broke it, all the efforts of his apprentice would be for nothing. Meng Wuya comforted himself while waiting on the outside. He didn't know this time he was making a big mistake. The reason that Xianxia activated the seal ahead of time was not to cope with 9 Yin Du crystals, but rather to deal with people from the blood group who wanted to kill them. Meng Wuya had no idea that at present his beloved disciple was very weak and that Kai Yang was bathed in blood and fighting off a huge crisis. If he knew this, he would definitely not hesitate to break open the seal and slaughter Wen Fei Chen 100 times over. Dares to harm this old man's disciple. Fuck your 18 generations of ancestors. Sometimes it looks like something is very close, but it is actually very far, just like the horizon. In Mountain Valley, Kai Yang was standing still with a straight back, just like a javelin, calmly waiting for the enemies to come. Whiz, whiz, whiz. Suddenly the sound of clothes fluttering in the wind could be heard from all around. They finally came. Kai Yang's face turned solemn. Turning his head to look in the direction of Xianxia's hiding place, he didn't know if after this battle he could still survive. But after making this decision, he had no regret. Brush, brush. 3 figures almost simultaneously appeared around Kai Yang. These 3 were the blood group separation and reunion boundary masters. The last one to arrive was a Qi transformation stage 9th level practitioner. So compared with others, his speed was slow. After arriving, these 4 people were quietly staring at Kai Yang with shocked expressions. Because they had seen Kai Yang just an hour ago, and at that time he was at the initial element 4th level, yet in such a short time he had reached the initial element stage peak. What's going on? Nu Lang's corpse was lying under his foot with a broken neck and his body in a pitiful state. They hadn't thought that he would die in a place like this. They felt slightly sorry for him. On this cold night, the wind blowing in this mountain valley made people feel unnerved. It was creepy. Was this person killed by you? A blood group separation and reunion boundary master asked. Where's your leader and Master Long? Kai Yang asked without answering his question, turning his head and looking around, but he didn't discover anyone else coming. The blood group had 7 people remaining when they arrived at the valley, including Wen Fei Chen and Long Hui. One was killed by Xianxia, so the only remaining members were these 4. Humph. To cope with you, why must Lord Wen and Master Long personally take action? The person who spoke, his age was not large. From his appearance he should be around 25 to 26 years old. Oh! Help me. The blood group are here. I am so scared. Kai Yang said in a sarcastic voice. The youth's face became ruthless. To cope with you, I alone am enough. Although most of his strength was sealed by the Yin Qi chains, he still was a master of the separation and reunion boundary, and if he fought he would be stronger than a Qi transforming stage master. How would he be unable to cope with Kai Yang? Lips are useless. Why not use fists to find out the answer? Kai Yang said, looking at him scornfully. Kai Yang also felt that the strength of these people had been reduced greatly. Their strength was nothing compared to before. Moreover, the world Qi in their bodies was quite unstable. The strength of the first 3 was comparable to Nu Lang. Even if they were strong before, at present they were not, and the person who came last was even weaker than Nu Lang had been. In a one-on-one with them, Kai Yang was confident he could win, even in this situation, as long as he kills one first, then everything would be easy to manage. Boy, you are quite arrogant. Let this grandfather give you a lesson. The youth who had spoken before walked forward while saying this. Seeing that his plan was a success, as long as this youth came within 10 feet of Kai Yang, Then even if Kai Yang was injured, he was confident in being able to kill him. But at this time, another separation and reunion boundary master said, "Long division younger brother, don't get tricked by him." At this moment that youth suddenly stopped his steps and looked coldly at Kai Yang and said, "Yes, Kai senior brother. At this place he is standing alone. And we don't know the location of that female's hiding place. That female has got many tricks up her sleeves. Do not be too impulsive, moreover this boy has already shown he has enough strength to kill Nu Lang. It looks like he was playing the role of a pig to eat the tiger. Let's take him down fast and get the location of that female." Senior Kai said, looking vigilant and waving his hands, he said, "Let's get him." For verses 1, moreover his strength was at the initial element boundary. Even if he had the strength to overturn the heavens, if he was able to use his power, he could only be caught. For people almost simultaneously moved like shadows from the east, west, north and south surrounding Kai Yang and sending killing intent towards him. Faced with this impending crisis, Kai Yang felt no fear. Laughing he said, "Well, looks like your blood group is only talk, and it looks like you are not too confident in your strength." Hearing this, that youth's complexion became red. Releasing his killing intent, he said, "Smelly brat, just wait and this grandfather will help you break your mouth. You are not qualified." Kai Yang roared. Burning one drop of his yang liquid, he made his body turn into a fireball, radiating burning hot waves of yang qi. While speaking, Kai Yang moved towards Yuan Lang, sending out a fist attack. A dull thumping sound was heard before Kai Yang staggered due to backlash. But Yuan Lang, on the other hand, with a startled cry, was sent flying. Retreating 3 steps, Kai Yang fell into the attack range of the surrounding 3 people. These 3 attacked Kai Yang one after another. Kai Yang dodged the attack from a master of separation and reunion boundary while exposing his back to only the weakest disciple in the blood group. Kai Yang's double palm attack, which contained a huge strength, was directed towards the chest of the person who was the most vigilant, senior brother Kai. He was also the person who reminded Yuan Lang a moment ago not to be rash and saved him from Kai Yang's trap. Of the 4 people who were led by him, his strength was naturally the highest. Even if his strength was sealed, he was still at the Qi transforming boundary 2nd level. Therefore Kai Yang decided to strike to kill him first. As long as he was killed, the other 3 weren't that big of a threat to him. In a single breath, Kai Yang was able to deal with 4 different people simultaneously. Senior brother Kai saw that Kai Yang had abandoned all pretense of defense and was instead targeting him. This made his brows wrinkle. Although he didn't know what Kai Yang was thinking, in his heart he had a bad premonition. In his palm attack, Kai Yang had surely hid some sort of profound technique. Drawing back, he also made his decision quickly. Although he didn't believe that Kai Yang could injure him, it was always better to play it safe. While drawing back, he simultaneously raised both of his hands in a defensive position in front of Kai Yang, wanting to probe his strength. Their palms had not even come in contact with each other yet. He discovered that the corner of Kai Yang's mouth was carrying a cold, ruthless, and sinister smile. "It doesn't look good. I fell into a trap." In the next instant, he saw Kai Yang's palms increasing in speed and moving forward while avoiding his own palms with a fearless determination, targeting his chest. These 2 palms would without a doubt hit him, but at the same time his own attack would also hit Kai Yang in return. "Is it that you want both of us to be injured simultaneously?" This thought had not even properly formed when Kai Yang's palms also changed. His hands suddenly began to burn and became blood red, looking like a palm covered in burning fluid with a very hot temperature. He could not dodge. The eyes of Senior Kai contained ruthlessness. This attack of Kai Yang's contained a drop of yang liquid. "After this attack, either you die or I will." Senior brother Kai was after all a master of the separation and reunion boundary. Although his strength was sealed and his current strength gave senior brother Kai a feeling like playing with bamboo fencing. But the quality of his world Qi is higher than Kai Yang's, wasn't it? 2 bumping sound were transmitted simultaneously. Senior brother Kai's palm hit Kai Yang at the same time that Kai Yang's double palm hit his own chest. In a moment, world Qi was transmitted to senior brother Kai's chest, and it felt like his skin is melting. This boy's world Qi is very pure. Senior brother Kai was shocked. If not for his cultivation being higher, he could have died by the might of his palm alone. Before this shock had even subsided, he once again felt Kai Yang's palms transmitting a boiling hot world qi. Along with this hot world qi which was being transmitted into his chest, he felt a severe pain. There was a slight feeling of his body being penetrated. This world qi was even causing his internal organs to be burnt. "Get away from me!" Senior Kai was enraged. Kai Yang was no longer able to keep his attack going and was thrown flying backwards like a rag bag upside down. A sword pierced his shoulder directly and his shoulder started to bleed, creating a hole that was visible on his shoulder. This attack hadn't even ended. Taking advantage of his injury, another master of the separation and reunion boundary, who was finally able to find an opportunity, kicked Kai Yang in his lower ribs ruthlessly. Kai Yang had dodged his attack a moment ago, which made him feel a little shame. So after finding such an opportunity, he was obviously going to be ruthless. At this moment, a small bottle suddenly fell from Kai Yang's chest pocket to the ground. In mid-air, Kai Yang spurted out a mouthful of blood and his legs staggered when he fell to the ground. His eyes contained some anxiety when looking towards the bottle that had fallen from his pocket. But he didn't dare to go forward and pick it up. Concentrating his energy on his feet, with lightning speed he submerged himself into the jungle for the first time. Yuan Lang, seeing his expression, hurried to pick up that small bottle. Kai Yang's laughter was transmitted from a distance. "Ha! Blood group separation and reunion boundary masters are just mediocre. How would he run now?" The blood group people looked at each other in blank dismay. They came to this place because of Kai Yang's howl. While he called them to come to find him, after that moment required to howl, he could have simply run away. But he didn't, and instead he waited for them to arrive. While speaking to them, his tone had even been quite arrogant. At that moment they thought that Kai Yang had an ace hidden up his sleeve, but at this moment he unexpectedly ran away. Didn't this mean he is just a dog, knew how to bark but can't bite? After hearing his talk, they had thought he surely had an ace. But now, looking at the direction he escaped to, they can only snort contemptuously. "Let's go after him. He was seriously injured just now and he wouldn't be able to run for long," Yuan Lang said while bitterly shaking his hands. He was only able to exchange one blow with him. He had not thought that Kai Yang's fist could contain such power. After recovering from his last attack, when he returned to join the fight, unexpectedly the fight had ended. After 3 breaths of time, they staggered forward with a dumb expression. After saying this, Yuan Lang then immediately started pursuing Kai Yang. The others also hurried to follow. Before they could even run a few steps, from behind them they heard the sound of something heavy falling to the ground. It surprised them. Turning back, when they looked down, they were surprised to see that their senior brother Kai was unexpectedly on the ground, his back facing upward, motionless. "Senior brother, are you all right?" Yuan Lang asked, alarmed, but he didn't get any response. "What happened?" the lowest strength disciple asked uncertainly. A moment ago, senior brother Kai exchanged a blow with Kai Yang, getting wounded silently. It wasn't possible that he had been seriously injured in that exchange, right? Something is wrong. The third person's brows wrinkled. He hurriedly moved forward towards the body of senior brother Kai and suddenly called out in alarm. He suddenly gasped, in astonishment. "How is he?" Yuan Lang asked while also moving forward. Looking at the body of their senior brother, he became dumbfounded. Because looking at the body, he noticed his senior brother's flesh at that moment was red. The blood under his skin was boiling. Both his eyes had burst. He was dead in the same pathetic way Nu Lang had died. At this moment, senior brother Kai was not breathing. His chest contained finger-sized holes, from which red blood was flowing out. "It's so hot!" exclaimed the disciple who was holding the body of his senior brother as he hurried to put his corpse down. When the body came into contact with ground, it burst open and hot blood burst out, scattering over the ground and forming a transparent blood fog. The remaining 3 people were fully drenched in blood. That blood also contained a burning hot world qi. The 3 of them became horrified. They were unable to imagine how the strongest amongst them, their brother Kai, could die such a horrible death. When did this happen? Did it happen when Kai Yang punched him? The 3 people were standing in the same place looking dumb. They were looking at the ground where the body of their senior brother was lying with a horrified expression. For masters from the blood group were trying to cope with Kai Yang together. But unexpectedly instead of him, it was one of them who was killed. But he was also injured by a sword and a foot kick, and his arms were also severely injured. But even with all these injuries, he was unexpectedly able to run away from them. Within their 3 hearts, none of them wanted to accept that fact. The person laying on the floor was actually a master of the separation and reunion boundary. That motherfucker was a master of the separation and reunion boundary. How could he be defeated by a practitioner at the initial element stage? There was an entire 2 realms of difference between the two. This gap was as big as the gap between heaven and earth. Even if more than half of that senior brother's strength had been sealed away, even if you included the fact that he needed to use world chi to resist the yin chi in the valley, his power would still be equivalent to someone at the chi transforming stage. Wasn't it? How could he just be killed like that? Their faces with either pale or flushed and filled with fear. They were all thinking, what if the target that Kaiyang had aimed for hadn't been that senior brother, but them instead? What would the result have been then? Without a doubt, they would be dead. Realizing this point, Yuan Lang realized that senior brother Kai's vigilance and foresight had been well-founded. If it wasn't for senior brother's reminders, he would have probably been the first one to die under Kai Yang's hand. How did senior brother actually die? The weakest practitioner among them finally spoke out, breaking the awkward and embarrassing silence. As soon as this question was asked, they immediately looked at each other in dismay. After replaying the previous scene in their minds, they finally found traces of Kai Yang's move. It was just that one exchange of injuries. It was the only attack that Kai Yang made during the entire battle. His strength is that high? One of them asked in horror. This isn't his skill. He probably possesses an extremely powerful weapon-type artifact. Otherwise, there would be no way he would be able to break through senior brother's defense and be able to kill him. Yuan Lang looked towards him and analyzed the situation as his mind gradually calmed down. The other person also agreed with his conjecture. If it weren't for the aid from that weapon-type artifact, how could Kai Yang possibly be able to achieve such results? For this type of thing, even if Kai Yang were to admit the truth himself, they wouldn't believe him. In order to activate this artifact, he must require an immense amount of world chi, so that's probably the reason why he can only use it once. After that shot, regardless of the result, he would flee. Yuan Lang's expression was unreadable. The more he thought, the more his thoughts became clear and more shrewd, infused with a bit more intelligence. His analysis was very suitable for explaining Kai Yang's unusual actions afterwards. In a confident tone, Yuan Lang said, "So, even if the current him possessed some remaining strength, he would be akin to an arrow at the end of its flight. As for the secret artifact, he definitely shouldn't be able to reactivate it again. Adding on the various wounds he received, he doesn't pose much of a threat." The other 2 also felt that his conclusions were correct, placing the stone within their hearts down. In the end, he only relied on a secret artifact in order to do battle. That really scared them for a moment. If his strength was really that monstrous, to the point that he could easily kill senior brother Kai, then they might as well wash their necks clean and send them out. Why would they struggle on death's door? The lowest-ranked blood group disciple said, "With senior brother dead, should we go back and report this matter?" Yuan Lang swiveled his head to look at him, lightly reprimanding, "Why should we return? If we don't go back to report, I don't think it would be the correct choice." He hesitatingly replied. That other person looked at the youth before suddenly laughing, saying to the weakest among them, "Junior brother Wu, you didn't understand senior brother Yuan's intention." Perplexed, that junior brother Wu turned back to Yuan Lang questioningly. Yuan Lang chuckled, "It's junior brother Xia who understands. I can't hide anything from you." Junior brother Xia also laughed lightly. "Great minds think alike." Junior brother Wu looked at the 2 of them in puzzlement. No matter how much he thought over it, he couldn't grasp the crucial point and could only helplessly ask, "My fellow 2 senior brothers, could you please explain the situation in clearer terms?" Glancing over at him, Yuan Lang finally explained, "Junior brother Wu, what grade do you think Kai Yang's secret artifact is?" Thinking over the question for a while, junior brother Wu slowly answered, "Between the 4 of us, in order to directly kill senior brother Kai in one move, the grade of the artifact definitely wouldn't be low." At the very least, it would be at the Earth grade middle level. It could even possibly be at the Earth grade upper level. They had all personally witnessed Xianxia use a heaven grade artifact. So even if an Earth grade artifact appeared within Kai Yang's hands, why would it surprise them? To say it was at the Earth grade was the lowest evaluation junior brother Wu could give, but also a fair evaluation. Yuan Lang nodded his head slightly. If we were to really go back and report this matter, what would you say the result would be? Junior brother Wu instinctively replied, Kai Yang would die, and the secret artifact be taken by Hallmaster 1. Stopping mid-sentence, that person realized what was happening. If they were to let Hallmaster 1 know that Kai Yang possessed an Earth-grade artifact, then would they receive anything? Long Hui already had his eyes set on that female's heaven-grade artifact. If Hallmaster 1 couldn't eat the meat, then why couldn't he drink the soup? And among the disciples, they wouldn't be able to even lick the sugar bits. At most, when they returned, Hallmaster 1 would bestow upon them a few gold and silver pieces. This time, experiencing the various dangers with many of their fellow brothers dying, were they really only able to obtain these few rewards? By putting their lives of the line, they should at least reap some harvest. Just a moment ago, they were on death's door. Even now their hearts were still beating with loud piu-tong sounds. How could a few gold and silver pieces be able to compensate them? Furthermore, Hallmaster 1 was well known for being stingy. So even if he did give them some money, it wouldn't be a lot. My two senior brothers' meaning is... Junior brother Wu asked out probingly. Yuan Lang and that senior brother Xia looked at each other simultaneously, and senior brother Xia nodded his head. Whatever senior brother says, we will execute it accordingly. Yuan Lang smiled. Good. Since my fellow two junior brothers have no objections, then we shall not go back and report it. Okay. The two people nodded their heads. As for that secret artifact on Kai Yang, Yuan Lang hid a smile and turned his head towards his two junior brothers. The one who can kill him and get revenge for senior brother Kai's death will be able to obtain ownership for that artifact. How about that? Junior brother Xie nodded his head. Then we shall follow what you have said. Shall we split up? Between the three of them, junior brother Wu's strength was the lowest. In the battle before, watching senior brother Kai die right there in front of him had scared him. He was worried that if he met with Kai Yang alone, he would be unable to defeat him. That junior brother Xie replied, What are you scared of? Kai Yang has activated that secret artifact once already. How much world chi would he have remaining? Not to mention that he has fought hard against the people from Stormhouse, and received even more fatal wounds from fighting us. The current him, anyone could easily take his life. Junior brother Wu also thought the same thing. Before they had arrived, Kai Yang had battled viciously against Nu Lang and probably used up a large amount of energy. The wounds he had received were also seen by him. The environment was also very cruel, so he needed to exhaust world chi and mental energy just to resist the cold and the yin chi. He most likely only had a sliver of power remaining, so if they really were to meet, he would easily be able to kill Kai Yang. The current circumstances were perfect for killing Kai Yang and gaining revenge for senior brother Kai. So if they wanted to obtain the secret artifact within his grasp, it would be given to the one who found him first. How could they possibly work together? With this thought, junior brother Wu took a few deep breaths to calm his boiling blood. Audifly links settling on their course of action. Senior brother Xie suddenly turned towards Yuan Lang. Senior brother Yuan, just as Kai Yang was leaving, he seemed to have taken out something. Do you know what that thing may be? Surprised, Yuan Lang smiled. Junior brother Xie really observes things down to the smallest detail. As he said this, he also opened up his hand to reveal a small bottle within the palm of his hand. It should have been a bottle of pills. May I take a look? Junior brother Xie asked, as he smiled slightly. Kai Yang and that female both possessed high-leveled artifacts, so their statuses weren't ordinary. When that bottle had accidentally fallen out, Kai Yang clearly showed his reluctance to part with it. Any reluctance on Kai Yang's part hinted that these pills would be worth quite a decent amount. Due to this, junior brother Xie didn't want Yuan Lang to hog all the benefits. Since all of them had participated in the battle, naturally they should all receive their share. You can. Yuan Lang knew what his junior brother Xia was thinking, so he wouldn't try to monopolize this spoil of war. Replying, he opened the bottle up to look inside. Upon looking inside, he let out a cry of bewilderment. I think they are Yang-attributed pills. Traces of happiness could be seen on Yuan Lang's face. Junior brother Xie and junior brother Wu became excited. Are you serious? Once you see, you'll understand. Saying this, he tipped out some of the pills and gave them to the other two disciples. They really are Yang-attributed pills. That junior brother Wu became really ecstatic. As he held the pill within his hand, he immediately felt the chilling cold disperse around him by a lot. It even reached the point that he no longer needed to waste world qi to restrict the invasion of the yin qi into his body. This pill was the ultimate nemesis of the yin qi within the valley. No wonder Kai Yang wasn't willing to part with them. In this type of evil environment, the most important thing was Yang-attributed pills. Once he lost this advantage of his, he would definitely regret it. Shaking the bottle a bit, Yuan Lang announced, "Since we have shared the pills between us already, my junior brothers, there may even be some profound mysterious hidden within them, so you shouldn't just eat them to defend against the cold. On that note, I shall take my leave." After all, this was something that Kai Yang had left behind. What if there was poison inside? Although they weren't as calculating as their senior brother Kai, they still weren't stupid enough to eat something their enemy left behind. Finishing his warning, Yuan Lang flourished his arms and disappeared. Shortly afterwards, both people stashed the pills within their bosoms and each went their respective ways to search for Kai Yang. Kai Yang was licking his wounds, stealthily hiding in the dense foliage at the top of a tree. Suppressing his presence as much as he could, he surveyed the surrounding area. His current situation wasn't very good. After the large battle with the 5 disciples from Stormhouse, his body had suffered some wounds. Coupled with the ferocious attack from the 4 blood group disciples, his injuries had become even more severe. The most serious one was probably the sword cut on his shoulder. It should have reached his bones. This caused Kai Yang's left arm to feel weak and it numbed his sense of touch. In order to avoid being followed by those remaining disciples from the blood group, Kai Yang had used his yang liquid to burn his injuries, cauterizing the wounds and preventing further bleeding. Even though willpower and special methods allowed him to stay in peak condition, at the end of the day, he was still only an initial element 4th stage practitioner. Under the stress of numerous large battles, his stamina and mental energy had been greatly sapped. If it weren't for his immense willpower, he would have long since collapsed. Recalling the savage battle that had occurred, Kai Yang couldn't help but let out a grim chuckle. That senior brother Kai was worthy of being a powerhouse at the separation and reunion boundary. Even if more than half of his strength had been sealed away, Kai Yang still had to expend 10 drops of yang liquid in order to break his defenses and deliver a fatal blow. But this was all worth it. Although using 10 drops of yang liquid was challenging, it was still worth it. It had allowed him to take the life of a separation and reunion boundary master. In this tense environment, Kai Yang's mind was as clear as ever. He knew that if he lost even one fight, not only would he lose his life, but Xianxia would also lose her life. With such great stakes, how could Kai Yang dare to relax for even a moment? In the blood group, apart from Long Hui and that extremely high-leveled person, there were only 3 people left. But their cultivations weren't as high as Senior Kai's had been. If it were one-on-one, Kia Yang had nothing to fear, but if they teamed up, then things would take a turn for the worse. Know yourself, know thy enemy. Only then will you emerge victorious in every battle. Kai Yang must know the 3's plan of attack and their location. Only then would he have a chance of winning. That's why before he left, he purposely left one of his pill bottles behind. You could say that one of the more important goals of that battle was to leave behind that pill bottle, the other being to kill the disciple called Kai. Both goals were completed without a single hitch. The discarded bottle contained black yang blood pills. Just a few days prior, he had found some black yang blood flowers. They had then been refined by Xianxia. At the time, his dantian still had plenty of yang liquid, and they were hurrying on their way to the valley so Kai Yang didn't take any. Unexpectedly, they had come in handy at such a time. Sometimes, even if one didn't eat the pills, they would be unable to evade trouble. This time, Kai Yang was going to teach them that even if they had placed the pills within their clothes, trouble could still appear. He believed that his plan would succeed. After all, this was the gathering place of the 9 Indu crystals, a place Qi was naturally attracted to. So if Yang attributed pills were to suddenly appear, it wouldn't be hard to imagine what one would do with them. So long as they kept the black Yang blood pills on them, he could use the origin of Yang to probe his surroundings and sense for their whereabouts. Because of this, all of their movements were within the palm of his hand. After waiting for a while, the origin of Yang within his chest area started to have a reaction. Kai Yang's expression became cold. He immediately took a few deep breaths and tried to calm his rising heart rate. Before long, someone had appeared below a nearby tree. Looking down, Kai Yang's brow wrinkled. How come there was only one person? Waiting a bit longer, in a nearby place, someone else hurriedly rushed over. Following that, a third person arrived at the place that Kai Yang was hiding. Looking down, Kai Yang found out that it was actually the blood group disciple with the lowest cultivation. This person looked around in all directions before scurrying off again. Strange. Why did these 3 people separate? His brows wrinkling, Kai Yang couldn't think of a reason for them doing so. Unbeknownst to him, those 3 were treating him like an arrow at the end of its flight. Moreover, since they believed he possessed a high-leveled weapon-type artifact, they wanted to test out their luck and see who would obtain it. It was no wonder those 3 would think like that. If it were any other initial element staged practitioner, the amount of world qi within their bodies wouldn't be a lot. So after that battle, with the exhaustion of large amounts of world qi, one shouldn't have much left. But Kai Yang wasn't the same. The amount of world qi he possessed was far more than ordinary practitioners. Not to mention the amount of yang liquid he had stored within his dantian. Before he had left, he had stored 40 complete drops of yang liquid. So even if he used up the qi within his meridians, it didn't matter because 1 drop was enough to replenish all of his world qi, allowing him to once again become as ferocious as a tiger. In other words, as long as he had yang liquid in reserve and his mental and physical strength could keep up, Kia Yang would be an untiring battle robot. If that senior brother Kai was still alive, given his cautious nature, he wouldn't allow his group to separate and give Kai Yang a chance to retaliate. But previously, with his serious wounds, Kai Yang had killed him, leaving Yuan Lang in command. Naturally, Yuan Lang wouldn't think that deeply. Although Kai Yang couldn't figure the reason why they had split up, the current situation was far better than the one he had imagined. So how would he grasp this opportunity? After confirming that the other 2 people were no longer in the vicinity, Kai Yang proceeded to jump down from the tree and followed the weakest disciple. Originally, Disciple Wu was at the Qi transforming 9th stage, which wasn't too bad. But after his strength had been sealed, he could only exert power equivalent to the Qi transforming 4th stage. Currently, he was tracking the blood vestiges Kai Yang had left behind throughout the forest as he fled. Unfortunately, in the time it took for a cup of tea to cool, the trail ended. This mountain valley was densely populated with trees, so finding someone would prove difficult. Disciple Wu didn't leave any suspicious place unsearched, even lifting his head to check for someone hiding in the trees every once in a while. But the light in this area was far too dim, increasing the difficulty of his search many-fold. I mustn't allow those 2 senior brothers to be quick-footed, and instead I should climb up first. If Kai Yang was caught by them first, then that Earth-grade secret artifact would be theirs, and I wouldn't have any claim. Earth-grade secret artifact. Just thinking about it made Disciple Wu's blood boil. If he could obtain that artifact, then Disciple Wu's power would rise significantly within the blood group. By relying on this artifact, he would even be able to defeat practitioners at the separation and reunion boundary. As he was busy searching around, he heard a crashing and crackling sound from behind him. Startled, he quickly turned out and shouted, "Who?" Following this, he looked around in all directions. Clutching his sword tightly, he remained on high alert, but didn't see or find anything unusual. From time to time, he heard crashing sounds. Looking around, he noticed the wind was blowing around loudly. He was able to discern the reason for the various sounds. He had treated every bush and tree as an enemy. Disciple Wu inwardly mocked himself. In this mountain valley, apart from his own people from the blood group, only Xianxia, these two people remained. Furthermore, they were focused on preserving their lives. So why would they readily walk down the road to death? Chuckling lightly, Disciple Wu turned around and prepared to continue his search. Unbeknownst to him, danger lurked above. Just as he relaxed his heart, a searing hot feeling suddenly appeared above his head. Simultaneously, his skin tightened as the smell of death closed in. Flabbergasted, he lifted up his head. Both eyes popping out of their sockets, Disciple Wu cried out in fright, "Kai Yang!" Just as those words escaped his mouth, Kai Yang arrived at his side. His movement like that of a swooping eagle. He flew towards Disciple Wu. This move was accompanied by a blistering hot palm. As Kai Yang slapped towards Disciple Wu's head, because these events happened so fast, by the time Disciple Wu could react and swing down with his sword, Kai Yang had already sent out his palm attack. In the midst of the exchange, Disciple Wu hurriedly moved his head to the side and dodged the lethal attack. Hong, it flew past his sword and landed on his shoulder. After it landed, a cracking sound immediately followed. Disciple Wu's entire arm had been lowered by a level, the bones broken. Ah! As the boiling hot qi invaded his body, Disciple Wu let out a blood-curdling cry. With the sword shaking due to his trembling arm, he went for Kai Yang's neck. Kai Yang immediately jumped backwards through the air and landed on the sword, narrowly avoiding the strike. Dropping to the ground once more, like a pouncing snake, he used his feet to quickly push him into Disciple Wu's wake. His hands like the wings of a butterfly, he spread out and disturbed Disciple Wu's balance. Making full use of the opportunity, he threw him to the ground. These movements were executed very quickly and smoothly. To anyone watching, it would have been a somewhat blurred sight. It was truly executed like the moving clouds and flowing water. Crashing to the ground, Disciple Wu spat out a mouthful of blood, while Kai Yang pinned his knee on Disciple Wu's shoulder and exerted more force through his hands. Kacha! Disciple Wu's right arm was now broken. Letting out a miserable scream, he was turned around. With both his arms disabled, he was ruthlessly stepped on by Kai Yang. Kai Yang only looked at him coldly without the slightest bit of emotion in his eyes. Lifting up the discarded sword, Kai Yang raised it up before lowering it straight down into Disciple Wu's chest. How can you actually? With blood foaming at his mouth, he looked incredulously at Kai Yang. How can you actually have the strength to still battle? You are only at the initial element stage, and as such should be weary and exhausted. Senior brother Yuan, I curse your mother. Your junior disciple's death could only be caused by you. Thinking his final thought, Disciple Wu's eyes started to dim. After killing Disciple Wu, Kai Yang's breathing was slightly ragged. The wounds on his body also showed indications of splitting opening again, with fresh blood starting to trickle out again. Not daring to tarry, Kai Yang started to search Disciple Wu's body. Not long after, he found his yang pills on his dead body. Not only this, Disciple Wu also had some fairly precious things. There was about half a bottle of returning qi pills and a few silver taels, all of which were taken by Kai Yang. Carrying Disciple Wu's corpse, he jumped into a nearby tree and proceeded to hide his body among the branches. After doing so, he jumped back down and began to search in another direction. Time was pressing. There was only about 4 hours left until the sun rose again. Meanwhile, he still needed to kill 4 more enemies. One of them was even a powerhouse at the true element boundary. A tough road was waiting for him. With the promotion of his cultivation, the area of effect of his origin of yang also increased. A rough estimation of his range was about 2,000 feet. Kai Yang was able to sense any yang qi presences within this range. 2,000 feet, this was quite a large area. Ordinarily, only those at the separation and reunion boundary would be easily able to sense any movements within this distance. But now, Kai Yang was the true master of this 2,000-foot area. In less than the time it took a stick of incense to burn, Kai Yang suddenly stopped in his tracks because he sensed the presence of another person. It was just that this person had been stationary in that position for quite a while, so he didn't know what their intentions were. Even after waiting for a while, that person still didn't move. Not to mention, Kaiyang felt that the place where that person was stationed at was quite strange. It was like the yin qi within the valley was converging in that position. Creasing his brows, Kaiyang stealthily crept over. Shortly, Kaiyang arrived about 30 feet away from the mysterious person. Hiding behind a large tree, he peered over. 30 feet away, a hazy figure could be seen. Not only that, a group of shimmering, snow-white objects could be seen blossoming over there. Those things were like small suns, lighting up everything in the area. They weren't big in size, about the size of a dove's egg, but from within they emanated a bone-chilling coldness, cold enough to freeze one's soul. Currently, those things were constantly revolving around and around. As it turned, an invisible force was pulling the yin qi in the valley towards them. Hurrying over, the 9 yin dew crystals had appeared. It was practically in an instant that Kaiyang realized what those things were. Although he had never seen what they looked like, Kaiyang was still able to recognize them. The reason why Xianxia had brought him over to the convergence place of this object was to allow her to refine it. It turns out that the 9 yin dew crystals looked like this. Originally, Kaiyang thought that it would have the appearance of a dewdrop, but now that he saw them he could see that this object was full of spirit energy. It was truly absorbing the yin qi from the heavens and earth. Just as Kaiyang was observing it, the person 30 feet away finally started to make their move. This person was junior disciple Xie. As his chase of Kaiyang was fruitless, he had unexpectedly found the place where the 9 yin dew crystals appeared. With his experience and knowledge, although he didn't know what this thing was, he still knew that it was something highly precious. After secretly observing from the sidelines, he couldn't wait anymore and want to take action. At this moment, Kaiyang also started to make his move. Currently, all of Disciple Xie's attention was occupied by the 9 yin dew crystals, so it was the perfect opportunity for him to mount a sneak attack. Even in his dreams, Disciple Xie would never have thought that Kaiyang would be able to find his position and dare to mount a sneak attack on him. On Disciple Xie's face was an extremely greedy expression. His body was nimble and his movements silent like a cat. Slowly, he crept up closer to the 9 yin dew crystals. With the distance slowly becoming smaller and smaller, 20 feet, 10 feet, 9 feet, the 9 yin dew crystals continued to stay in their position, continuously absorbing the qi in the valley and raising gusts of strong wind. When the distance between Disciple Xie and the 9 yin dew crystals was only 5 feet, his world qi exploded and surrounded him. Then leaping out like a cheetah with his eyes ablaze, he reached out to grab at the 9 yin dew crystals. At that time, Kaiyang also made his move. With his eyes fixed on Disciple Xie, Kaiyang's feet carried him swiftly out like the wind. Clutching the newly acquired blade in his hand, he prepared to strike a killing blow when his opponent's defenses were at their lowest. Just when Disciple Xie thought he had obtained it, the 9 yin dew crystals suddenly stopped absorbing qi. Then from within its core, it burst out waves of cold yin energy that started to attack Disciple Xie. All of this happened far too quickly, so quickly that he couldn't even stop. Great astonishment showed on Disciple Xie's face. Previously, he could tell that this was a heavenly treasure, but he could never have predicted this thing had spirit awareness and could counterattack at the most critical of times. Disciple Xie's mind was currently a mess. When facing this sudden cold attack, his mind and body were scared beyond belief as he spurred his world qi to protect him from the incoming attack. Just as he finished his preparations to take that strike, the 9 yin dew crystals flashed and the attack vanished without a trace. In the moment it flashed, the brightness in the surrounding area also vanished and dimmed. With the sudden loss of light, Disciple Xie's eyesight was greatly impacted, and he was unable to see any changes in the surrounding area. And it was in that split moment that Kaiyang acted. Even though Kaiyang's sight had also been affected, he could out the approximate position of his enemy. Even if that blade couldn't take a life, it was guaranteed to make his life uncomfortable. All of Disciple Xie's attention was focused on the cold, so how could he spare any attention on the incoming death blade? In the next instant, Disciple Xie's entire body flashed. Attacked by the cold, His entire body was like an ice block as he furiously revolved his world chi. He unconsciously shivered. Before he could even take a breath, he felt a piercing pain from his waist. It was like something had stabbed him. Disciple Xie's battle experience was plentiful. After all, he was a separation and reunion boundary cultivator. Although his view was partially blocked, he still instinctively kicked towards Kai Yang's location. With a muffled grunt, Kai Yang was hit and flew backwards. Both people started to pant really hard. Now, there was no longer a need for Kai Yang to hide anymore. With his eyesight gradually returning, Disciple Xie looked poisonously at Kai Yang. Meanwhile, his body shook unconsciously, and his hand clasped the wound he had received. The blade had penetrated quite deeply into his side. Just then, Kai Yang used all of his strength to make the stab. And because Disciple Xie had to use a fair amount of world chi to defend against the cold, how could he spare any defenses to block that stab? "It's you." After confirming Kai Yang's identity, Disciple Xie's face momentarily lit up. Just then, various possibilities had run through his mind. One possibility was that either Yuan Lang or junior brother Wu had mounted a sneak attack, eliminating him when they had the chance. Fellow disciples killing each other was quite normal after all. Another possibility was that that female had attacked him with the intention to kill. Or another unlikely possibility was that within this mountain valley, there was another group of people. But no matter what, he would have never thought that the attacker was actually someone they had determined to be a sheep on the cutting board. Kai Yang. He. Slowly rising, Kai Yang smiled maliciously and stretched arm which had taken the kick. After confirming that nothing big had happened, he began to walk fearlessly, step by step, over. The present Disciple Xie was a crossbow at the ends of its rope. How could it be? Disciple Xie's face quickly paled. Although I don't know what you are flabbergasted about, I presume that this situation differs greatly from what you anticipated. Kai Yang replied, laughing coldly. We. Lowering his head to look down, Disciple Xie's face revealed his surprise. This is junior brother Wu's sword. That's right. He is already dead. Now it's your turn. Turns out we had all been fooled by you. With this realization, an intense sense of humiliation and unwillingness burst out from Disciple Xie's heart. When senior brother Kai had died under Kai Yang's hands, they could still say it was due to the secret artifact's might. But now, he himself would die under Kai Yang's hand. Your father is a separation and reunion boundary practitioner. Now, he would actually be killed by a practitioner at the initial element stage. What logic is this? Stifling, this was extremely stifling. Crying out wah, an arrow of blood streamed out from Disciple Xie's mouth. He was depressed to the limit. The wound on his body, the mental humiliation, combined they had made him haggard and he was left with no chance to redeem himself. I don't have any grudges or enmities with you, but since you came knocking, then don't blame me for being ruthless. His face cold, Kai Yang walked up and struck out. Disciple Xie was like the final radiance from a dying sun, his eyes glittering many times brighter. Forcibly extracting the blade from his side, he used it to slice towards Kai Yang. Crouching down, Kai Yang sent out a hook punch to Disciple Xie's chin, crushing it to pieces. Flying backwards from the momentum, he then proceeded to smash heavily into the earth. Not allowing him any more chances to resist, Kai Yang followed up with 2 more punches containing his world chi, leaving Disciple Xie completely at his mercy. Standing back, he sneered, "You want to play with crafty plots and machinations? Well, I am your grandfather." His eyes clear, Disciple Xie wanted to appear weak and helpless before dealing the killing blow to Kai Yang. But Kai Yang had long been prepared for it. Even rabbits will lash out when cornered, let alone a martial practitioner. Before the enemy was completely dead, any mistakes and the lowering of one's guard would result in death. After killing him, Kai Yang searched around for anything useful. Unfortunately, there wasn't much, only 2 more bottles of pills and some money. These people were still on an outing, so they wouldn't bring too many things. Those pills were useful for him and the money too. Without any shame or guilt, he shoved them into his pockets. In the same manner as before, He hid the corpse in a large nearby tree before looking around. To his surprise, the 9 Indu crystals had long since vanished without any trace. Previously, when the 9 Indu crystals burst out in its brilliance, Kai Yang could feel the energy quite clearly. That energy was a very domineering energy. No wonder they needed him to come and help subdue it. That object's spirit awareness was quite high, and when danger arose it would immediately flee. Apart from Yang-attributed energy, there wouldn't be anything else that would be useful in countering it. There was still about 2 hours left until the sun rose. He must hasten his speed, but before that, he must return and ask Xianxia on how to subdue the 9 Indu crystals. The 9 Indu crystals drifted from place to place, without any specific route. This mountain valley was also quite large, so if one's luck was good, then they would be able to meet up with it. So if they do, then they might as well obtain it and draw things to a close. But no matter how much Kai Yang asked how to do so, whether it was Xianxia or Old Man Meng, both of them refused to answer. They both said that things will be revealed in due time. This had caused him to be quite suspicious. It's about time everything was made clear. The place in which Xianxia was hiding, Kai Yang still remembered quite clearly. While he was sprinting over, he paid close attention to all of his surroundings while focusing on his origin of Yang to see if he could meet up with Yuan Lang. But throughout the entire journey, the origin of Yang had no reaction whatsoever. Who knows where Yuan Lang had run off to? This left Kai Yang at a loss, but in the end, his area of search was only the area within 200 feet of himself. If Yuan Lang was out of this range, then naturally he wouldn't be able to feel a thing. When he smelled a sweet fragrance and was about to arrive at the area where Xianxia was hiding, the origin of Yang started to react. Kai Yang was both startled and happy. Startled over the fact the Yuan Lang was very, very close to Xianxia's position, and happy because he had finally found that final blood group disciple. Could it be that he had already discovered Xianxia's location? Thinking of this, Kai Yang hastened his pace and sprinted with all his might over, while focusing his attention carefully looking for any movements in the area ahead. The next instant, Kai Yang let out a breath of relief because the area was very quiet and lacked movement. Yuan Lang most definitely hadn't found Xianxia's hideout. Otherwise, he would have long since started to commence his attacks. He wasn't too concerned over Xianxia's safety, due to the fact that she could still activate that heaven-grade defensive artifact of hers. But the position of the cave was too awkward. It only had one entrance and exit. So if Yuan Lang blocked that entryway and signaled for Long Hui and that master to come over, then things would get very bad indeed. With this thought, Kai Yang became more alert and cautious. Xianxia was currently very worried. Right after Kai Yang left, she started to recover her world chi. After taking one of Wen Fei Chen's blows, then activating that heaven-grade defensive artifact and then activating the 9-cloud 8 locks. The amount of world chi she had exhausted was far greater than any other person there. During the time she was recovering, she used up all the pills she had brought with her, yet only recovered a small portion of her strength, about equal to the world chi of someone at the initial element 7th-8th stages. Just then, she sensed movement outside of the cave. She was very startled. She didn't dare to move a single muscle as she hid in the cave. Squinting her big and bright pair of eyes, she peered outside to see who dared to come here. She hoped that it was Kai Yang. But if it was Kai Yang, then he would have no reason not to come inside directly. That person wandered outside for quite a while, clearly demonstrating that it was not the person she was hoping it to be. It was an enemy. She just didn't know what cultivation level they had reached. That person stayed outside and searched for about the time it took to burn a stick of incense. They searched each nook and cranny very seriously, but were without any result. Hearing their footsteps receding, Xianxia couldn't help but release a sigh of relief. Unfortunately, at that moment, at the front of the cave a slight shuffling of bushes could be heard, and Xianxia's heart, which had just calmed down, started to beat quickly again. Then the next instant, a small black shadow ran out from the shrubs towards Xianxia. She was so scared that she nearly screamed. Looking closely, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That little creature was a squirrel that lived in the valley. It was probably frozen by the yin qi, so it had come to find a cave in which to hide from the cold. Xianxia cautiously stretched out her hand towards the creature. But that squirrel was very alert, and upon discovering that someone else had occupied the cave, it immediately ran back out. A large hand suddenly appeared in the air and caught the squirrel. Squeezing hard, it burst into blood and guts. He 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 he. A series of laughs rang out in the silence as Yuan Lang's silhouette blocked the only entrance of the cave. A look of delight could be seen on his face while he looked at the sitting Xianxia. He said, "So you were hiding here?" Xianxia gave him a very frosty glare, her clear eyes displaying her fury. Women contained a natural love towards small animals, especially towards very cute-looking animals. Although that squirrel had revealed her position, Yuan Lang's method of killing it had truly enraged her. "You really made me look hard for you." Standing at the entrance, Yuan Lang sized up Xianxia. "To lose at the sunset, but gain at the sunrise. Even if I didn't find Kai Yang, finding you is equally good." Hearing that, her heart let out a sigh of relief. It seemed that her junior brother was still safe and sound. "If you dare come closer, I will make you die a miserable death," Xianxia frostily threatened. But due to her pure and innocent character, that threat came out a bit weak. If it were any other person, that threat would contain at least a little bit of power. As for Yuan Lang, he could hear the lack of confidence in her words and mockingly smirked. "You still have energy to battle? Taking one of Wen Fei Chen's hits and not fainting is considered quite good. I guess this could be considered your final struggle before death's door." Although Yuan Lang's true strength had been sealed away, Xianxia wasn't in much better shape. Yuan Lang wasn't the least bit scared of her, because they were both practitioners at the separation and reunion boundary. It was just one's level was higher while the other one's was lower. Furthermore, the only entrance had been blocked by Yuan Lang. So his position was extremely advantageous. He held all the power. "Be an obedient child and listen to what I say. If you do, I promise to not treat you badly. But if you don't, then don't blame me for being heartless." Yuan Lang viciously threatened her. Xianxia remained silent as she started to prepare her world qi, waiting for the chance when he started to come closer to give him a fierce strike. Of course, Yuan Lang could see what she wanted to do, so he just stood at the entrance, making her bitterly complain. "I know that you possess a heaven-grade defensive artifact, so I cannot do anything to you. But what if I were to call the others over? Would you still have any hope of escaping?" Yuan Lang wasn't impatient, fully in the mood for a bit of cat and mouse, using his eloquent words to break Xianxia down. "What do you want to do?" Xianxia asked coldly. "What do I want to do? I think I should be asking you this question. I just want you to obediently satisfy a few of my requests. If you don't, then I'll call the others over." Aware that his chance had come, Yuan Lang revealed his foxtail. "What requests?" Xianxia had also decided to play along with his game. The more time she bought, the more time she had to recover her world qi. 1. I want you to seal away your world qi and obediently allow yourself to be captured. 2. Hand over your defensive artifact. 3. Yuan Lang let out an excessive smile. "I want you to take off your veil and show me your true features. Relax. If you are a true beauty, I won't do anything to you. I will let you go and definitely not make things hard for you." Those words, even a little child wouldn't believe them. If Xianxia really sealed away her cultivation, then wouldn't she be at the mercy of Yuan Lang? In the situation where there was only an unmarried young male and female, which man could resist the temptations of a beautiful woman? Even if Xianxia was innocent, she wasn't that easily tricked. Immediately she rebuked him. "In your dreams, you are forcing my hand." Yuan Lang's expression turned frosty. "It's you who is bullying wantonly." Xianxia didn't back down in the slightest. His expression frosty. Yuan Lang's heart hissed, but still he forced himself to endure, and instead he said, "Then we must see if this young lady's defensive artifact can endure my attacks." He really couldn't bear having such a stubborn-mouthed beauty slip through his fingers so easily. If he could use his own power to subdue Xianxia, then it would be equivalent to obtaining a heaven-grade artifact. With that treasure, where underneath the sky would he dare not to go? no longer needing to stay in the blood group and put his life on the line, right? Not to mention that this female's background was unknown, so there shouldn't be only just that one secret artifact in her possession. That's why he wanted to test his luck. If he really couldn't break through her defense, then it wouldn't be too late to send for backup. Since he was already here, she definitely wouldn't be able to escape him. The entire time he was thinking over this matter, he was grinning suspiciously while looking at Xianxia. Xianxia secretly lamented in her heart. Although she had recovered more than 20% of her strength and had enough to activate that defensive artifact, it still used up a great deal of world qi. As soon as she did so, she would revert back to her powerless self. Not to mention that she had planned on using her recovered world qi to search for Kaiyang. How could she afford to use it all in one go? But if she did not do this, she didn't have any confidence in overpowering Yuan Lang. Furthermore, her position wasn't too good, so she wasn't able to exert much of her true power. It seemed like her only option was to hinder him for a while and remain alert for any opportunity to finish him in one go. Xianxia had no hesitation whatsoever. The opponent had already bullied her this far, so how could she let him go just like that? As the distance between the two gradually shrunk, Xianxia slowly stood up. Revolving her world qi, she stared attentively towards the approaching Yuan Lang. It was truly the moment where bitter rivals faced each other. In the cave where there was only one entrance via exit, neither party could easily evade their opponent's attacks. When the distance had shrunk to 3 feet, Yuan Lang's smile vanished and was replaced with a serious expression. Xianxia's sudden strike was completely out of Yuan Lang's expectations. Her jade hands performing a seal, an arrow of cold wind flew towards Yuan Lang. Yuan Lang frowned. He never thought that any strength would still reside in this female, let alone enough for her to put up any form of resistance. How much time had passed since she had received that injury? Even if she used qi restoration pills, the speed of recovery wouldn't be that fast, right? What he didn't know was that Xianxia possessed a special physique. Once she ate a pill, she would be able to absorb and refine the pill completely. If this wasn't the case, then with small amount of pills she had, how would she be able to recover 20% of her energy? That blade of cold wind penetrated deep into his body, reaching his bones. It was shaped like a crystal blade. It was created from the yin qi within the mountain valley. Coupled with her special physique, its killing power was decent. Moreover, it didn't use a lot of world qi to make, and its speed was very fast. A muffled whimper could be heard as Yuan Lang gathered his world qi in his palm. Charging forward, he shouted, "Flying Cloud Palm!" The Flying Cloud Palm wasn't a palm skill. Rather, it was more of a sword skill. It was an Earth-grade lower-level martial skill. Its power wasn't that strong, but due to the fact that Yuan Lang didn't have any swords on his body, he could only use it with his palm. Naturally, this would result in a decrease in its power. Nonetheless, Xianxia's strike had been cut off and rendered useless. When he felt that the strike contained no killing power, Yuan Lang smirked. But unexpectedly, he heard some swishing sounds. Looking up, he saw Xianxia had sent out another. This caused Yuan Lang to be angered. His hands moving in a flurry of movements, he shouted, "Azure Dragon's Cry!" Following that, a dragon's roar could be heard. The might contained in this attack was far greater than his previous Flying Cloud Palm. Without allowing him any time to breath, more swishing sounds could be heard as Xianxia sent out more streams of cold air over. Yuan Lang didn't stop his steps and used his strength to resist. Thousand Ju steps, Flying Phoenix Death Strikes, Heavenly Life Lightning, Transforming Iron Palms, Beheading Steel Hands, Spirit Dragon Fists. He was worthy to be called an expert at the separation and reunion boundary, possessing a large variety of martial skills. With 100 methods, he contended against Xianxia's onslaught, causing the cave to become a place of deep water and scorching fire. While Xianxia did not change her attacks whatsoever. "Who cares if you have a multitude of skills? I will only use these ice beams of mine." The two people were 3 feet apart and neck to neck, evenly matched. Along the cave walls, seams had started to form due to the aftershocks of their clashes. With the wind whistling, Yuan Lang finally realized something wasn't right. His own cultivation had been sealed away, so while he needed to expend world chi to block in the invasion of the cold, he had also successively used so many chi-consuming skills. So right now, he was feeling quite tired. Meanwhile, the female opposite still looked the same as she did when she started to fight. She wasn't red-faced, nor did it look like her heart was very heavy. Like the skill she was using didn't require any money. Like she hadn't used an ounce of world chi. Little did he know that the cold beams that Xianxia had been executing were formed with the cold yin chi within the valley. She only needed the smallest amount of world chi to condense them and give them such killing power. It was only at that moment, Yuan Lang realized that in his current sealed state, he was unable to eat Xianxia. Flying into a rage of humiliation, he viciously said, "Stinking bitch, if you don't surrender now, I will call over young Master Long. Once he comes, he will definitely ruthlessly violate you, making you wish you were dead, but you won't be." "Despicable," Xianxia responded. "Hee. Any female that falls into Long Hui's hands will not have a good future. You might as well be clever and follow me. I promise you that I will treat you well." "Shameless," Xianxia rebuked, furious. "I will count to 3. If you don't surrender in that period, then don't blame me for not giving you a chance." His expression sinister, Yuan Lang pulled out his final bargaining chip, before slowly and deliberately calling out, "1, hacking and striking." As the two were exchanging their words, they continued to exchange strikes. 2. Yuan Lang very deliberately extended the time he took to say the word. Xianxia's eyes suddenly became crescent-shaped. Although the duration of that movement wasn't long, Yuan Lang was certain that she had smiled. When she smiled, she was really pretty. All of a sudden, Yuan Lang didn't want to call out 3. "Have you thought it over?" He thought she had changed her mind. Xianxia's eyes remained shaped like a crescent moon as she cutely said, "You thought you were the only one who was able to call for reinforcements?" "What?" Yuan Lang didn't comprehend what she meant. "I also called for reinforcements." Looking at the person behind Yuan Lang, Xianxia said in a sobbing tone while stamping her foot, "Junior brother, it's about time you came." Yuan Lang couldn't help but sneer as he said, "You want to use these type of lowly methods to trick me? Miss, you really think I am that type of idiot? You really are an idiot." An extremely cold voice, devoid of emotion, sounded from behind Yuan Lang. As Yuan Lang attempted to turn around hurriedly, Xianxia struck out, causing him to become uncoordinated. This was also further influenced by the narrow passage and the fact that he could neither advance nor retreat, putting him a very awkward position indeed. "Pu Chi," he heard. Yuan Lang could only feel a dull pain and was vaguely aware that a sharp object had penetrated his body. Looking down, he saw that a sword was piercing his stomach. The sword which had penetrated his chest caused a life-threatening wound. Yuan Lang could feel his heart constricting and the blood madly gushing out. Feeling his life draining away, he hurriedly turned his head around to look at Kai Yang behind him. "Animal!" Yuan Lang shouted out, his expression highly grotesque, as he was so unwilling to meet his end here. Kai Yang stayed silent and only moved to pull out the sword, bringing with it a warm stream of red blood, only to re-pierce his body. After taking 4 direct blows, Yuan Lang couldn't endure any longer and directly fell onto the ground. With his vision gradually fading away, Yuan Lang let out a bitter smile on death's door. "Fate is really as unfavorable and luck toys with you." Originally he had thought that by standing at the entrance and blocking the female's path, he would be able to assert dominance over her. Contrary to that, however, he was the one who was trapped in the end. If it wasn't for the location's special topography, how would he fall this easily? Even if he couldn't beat them in a 1 versus 2 fight, he would still be able to run, right? But now everything had been in vain. Hunters will eventually become the prey one day. "You're okay, right?" Kai Yang looked at Xianxia. In reality, before Yuan Lang had even discovered this little senior sister of his, Kai Yang had already been in the vicinity. He had just waited until Yuan Lang entered the cave to battle with Xianxia, thus exhausting himself, before mounting that ambush of his. although this method was somewhat despicable and Xianxia had been completely unaware of the situation. But in the end, it was the most energy-efficient method. "I'm fine, you." Before Xianxia could finish her sentence, she saw the large gash on the side of his stomach and the bloody wound on his shoulder. At this moment, the blood-covered Kai Yang's expression was one of calmness and concern. He gave off a steady and reliable air that was exclusive to men, completely different from his usual too weak to even stand against the wind look. His tall body blocked the entrance of the cave, but his body was unwavering and appeared as sturdy as a mountain, blocking all wind and tribulations, turning this isolated mountain cave into a peaceful, warm, and safe harbor. Walking a few steps forwards, her small hands shook as she reached out towards the stomach wound, yet she didn't dare to touch it. Xianxia was afraid that the slighted touch would be painful, which led to her eyes turning red. In these short 4 hours, what type of harsh battles did he have to endure in order to gain such horrendous wounds? How much did he have to bleed in order for this much blood to cover him? In this isolated cave, after confronting the 10 or so beast-like people, Xianxia and Kai Yang felt that they were mutually dependent on each other for their survival. So when she saw his miserable condition, how could her heart not be in pain? There was no female that didn't have the dream of the hero saving the damsel. Although the person saving her wasn't some great hero, nor was it through some heroic deed. It was only an ordinary initial element stage junior brother. When compared to her own cultivation, their distance was tens of thousands of li apart. But regardless, the young lady's heart couldn't help but have a few ripples. "Small injuries," Kai Yang replied in an uncaring tone. "That's right. I discovered the 9 Indu crystals." "Oh." Wiping her eyes, Xianxia didn't register the excitement within his voice. "How do we actually capture those things?" "I think it's about time you told me," he asked. "Otherwise, when we find them again, I'm afraid we can only let them escape again. We don't need them anymore." Pulling on Kai Yang's hand gently, Xianxia motioned for Kai Yang to sit down. "Why don't you need them?" This caused Kai Yang to furrow his brow. Suffering all those hardships and trials, wasn't it all for the 9 Indu crystals? Ignoring his question, Xianxia began, "Sit down before we talk." Looking at her suspiciously, Kai Yang then began to slowly sit down. Bowing down her head, half kneeling in front of Kai Yang, she bit her lip. Then reaching into her dress, she began to fiercely rip her clothing to shreds. After tearing a long strip of cloth, she took out a bottle of medicine and smeared some onto the cloth. Then tentatively, she started to bandage the wound on Kai Yang's abdomen. Kai Yang allowed her to fiddle with the bandage. "We shall wait for sunrise here." As she said this, she was also bandaging Kai Yang's injury. "Once the sun rises, the 8 locks 9 cloud seal will come undone. When that time arrives, we shall leave this place. But the reason why we came here, we don't need it anymore." Cutting off Kai Yang, Xianxia's words held a resolute tone. "It's not worth it for that." Looking at her in a pondering way, Kai Yang spoke up. "I know what you were thinking about, but I have already killed 9 of them. There are only those 2 remaining." "What?" Raising her head, Xianxia's pair of eyes contained her disbelief. "They have 2 people, we also have 2 people. Are you afraid that they will do anything?" A flash of madness could be seen in Kai Yang's eyes. "Since they won't be merciful, then naturally we shall not be polite either. The 9 Indu crystals will not be spared either. We cannot do things halfway." "You're joking, right?" Xianxia delicately asked. "Are you that easily tricked?" Kai Yang chuckled, but in doing so accidentally tore his wound open a bit and couldn't help but let out a hiss of pain. "They really only have 2 people remaining? And only Long Hui and that person who injured you are left," he said, nodding his head in response. Xianxia stared blankly ahead. Previously Xianxia thought that when Kai Yang had left, he was chased madly by those wanting to kill them, thus receiving those wounds. She thought he was quite lucky to have escaped with his life. But in actuality, he had gone and killed 9 people in 4 short hours. There were quite a few at the separation and reunion boundary as well. How did he achieve this? If they really only have 2 people remaining, then we really don't need to fear them, she said, knitting her eyebrows together. My only worry is that true element boundary master. Once his true cultivation is restored and he is adamant about chasing us, then we will truly be unable to escape far. Raising his eyebrows, Kai Yang asked, once the seal breaks, his cultivation can return? Yes. Then we have no choice. Kai Yang's expression gradually turned cold and decisive. If they don't kill that true element boundary master before the sun rises, then they would be the ones to be killed. But I have only recovered 20% of my strength. If we really encounter that powerhouse, then I'm afraid we would be in great danger. Xianxia sighed out. I have salvaged quite a lot of medicinal pills. Go look around for any that you can use. Taking out the pills he had looted from the corpses, he then went to search Yuan Lang's body. Immediately he found a few bottles of pills. From the looks of it, Yuan Lang was quite wealthy, more than the other disciples at least. From the amount of bills and money alone, he had a few folds more. With these qi-returning pills, I should be able to recover 40% of my power. A small smile could be seen on Xianxia's petite face. Go restore your world qi then. I shall stand guard for you. Kai Yang also needed a bit of time to recover. Although he hadn't used up all of his world qi, he still needed to restore his physical and mental energy. There was only 2 hours left until the sun rose. Walking out of the hidden cave, Kai Yang and Xianxia started to follow the flow of yin qi within the valley. It was extremely easy to identify the direction the yin qi was flowing in. This was because the 9 yin dew crystals were absorbing the qi at a monstrous pace. Basically speaking, as long as you were within the valley, you would be able to sense this change. From Kai Yang's speculations, the 2 remaining people from the blood group would also go to investigate this movement of the yin qi. When that time came, they would naturally meet up. Even after killing several qi transforming and separation and reunion boundary practitioners, Kai Yang's battle thirst had yet to subside. This was because there was still a master at the true element realm. As long as pressure existed, the golden skeleton would automatically be active, causing both his mind and body to be unable to relax. The only unknown factor was how much power that true element practitioner had remaining after being sealed. After the time it took burn a stick of incense, they gradually drew closer to the location of the 9 yin dew crystals. In that area, there was a bright light. The 9 yin dew crystal floated at the center of this light. At that point, yin qi was gobbled up, disappearing at a rapid pace. This truly was the 9 yin dew crystals that Kai Yang had seen earlier. But its current appearance, when compared to before, was vastly different. The previous 9 yin dew crystals were very plain, with no distinct shape. Presently it looked like a young flower bud that was beginning to bloom. The young and tender flower petals could all be distinctly distinguished. Hiding themselves, their distance to the 9 yin dew crystals was about 50 feet. Xianxia softly whispered, "The 9 yin dew crystals are situated within that flower bud. Once the bud fully blooms, they will reveal themselves. Only when that moment comes would we be able to capture them. Originally, I had planned to use the sealing formation to obtain the 9 yin dew crystals, but I was forced to activate it early to deal with those people. And only when all those people who have been sealed have died, will the 9 yin 8 cloud locks return. I can only count on Junior Brother's ability now, for it perfectly counters its yin attribute. I'm afraid I have no skills that can assist you this time." "Doesn't it know how to flee?" Kai Yang asked, wrinkling his brows. "That's right, so there isn't much hope." Once again, Xianxia started to have thoughts of retreating. "Say, if we were to kill the remaining people, then would you be able to use the sealing formation again?" Squinting his eyes, Kai Yang asked. "Even if you speak like that, what if they don't come here? They have already arrived." His gaze expressionless, Kai Yang suddenly pivoted his head, looking to the side. When Fei Chen's hearty laugh could be heard, "Hee, you are quite sharp-eyed boy." Xianxia's beautiful face became icy as she swiveled her head towards the direction of his voice. Looking over, she saw Wen Fei Chen and Long Hui walking together, like a married couple. Their gazes contained a fiery passion as they looked at the slightly poor-conditioned Xianxia. It was just one of them coveted the heaven-grade defensive artifact on her, while the other coveted her body. Qia Yang's expression was calm, as he stood shoulder to shoulder with Xianxia, facing the approaching pair. Calm and composed, when Fei Chun stopped 20 feet away from them. Keeping his smile, he said, "You guys are surprisingly still alive. It seems like those trash really can't become anything big." Without rest, when Fei Chun had been diligently attempting to unseal the Yin Qi seals within his body. But no matter what he did, he couldn't make it happen. Meanwhile, none of those disciples had come back to report. This had caused him and Long Hui to be very anxious. Afterwards, they both felt the change in the Yin Qi within the valley. Investigating the cause had led them to this location. As soon as they arrived, they were greeted by Kai Yang and Xianxia. Due to this, when Fei Chun and Long Hui had become overjoyed at this fortuitous encounter, no longer bothering to hide their presence, they grandly walked over. Since things had escalated to this degree, when Fei Chun wouldn't be polite and talk things out, he then called out on the spot, wanting to recall the disciples. After calling out, he realized that the youngster standing opposite him didn't have an ounce of fear. In fact, his gaze held ridicule. This caused Wen Fei Chun to be puzzled. Why was he so certain and confident? Taking a step forward, Kai Yang sneered, calling out, "Even if your throat gets hurt from the shouting, no one will come to aid you." When Fei Chen's expression faltered, "What happened to them? They have all already died. Dead people have no method to return to help you." Kai Yang chuckled as he replied. Momentarily, when Fei Chen's expression became dark, looking at Xianxia in astonishment. From his conjunctures, in order to kill all those separation and reunion boundary disciples, only Xianxia would be able to do it. A measly practitioner at Kai Yang's level would not be able to complete this feat. A miscalculation. Never in his wildest dreams would he have predicted that this female would still have the energy to do something like that. A couple of hours earlier, when he had landed that blow on her body, he could feel that she didn't have much power remaining. How could she recover this fast? Even if all of them are dead, don't you guys even dream of escaping my hands? Arrogantly Humphinji, it was clear that he didn't really care about those disciples' deaths. Taking another step forward, Kai Yang activated his true Yang tactics, with his blood boiling and his killing intent soaring. Just as he prepared to land a blow on Wen Fei Chun, a beautiful figure flew out from behind him towards Wen Fei Chun. Xianxia had taken the initiative to attack first. Furthermore, it was a direct provocation to Wen Fei Chun and Long Hui. She clearly wanted to look out for the injured Qia Yang, initiating a 2 versus 1 battle. Her figure swaying, 10 Yin Qi arrows attacked flew out, 7 towards Wen Fei Chun and 3 towards Long Hui. Their speed was as fast as lightning and their presence domineering. Wen Fei Chun laughed out coldly. "Little girl, your killing intent is quite strong. This isn't very good." As he spoke, he used his 2 hands to easily dissolve the incoming attacks and said, "Young Master Long, I shall leave that boy to you. I shall take of this girl." "Okay." Nodding his head slightly, Long Hui didn't forget to casually add, "Just don't injure her face. This one will be careful." Smiling knowingly, he immediately dashed towards Xianxia to begin their battle. Even though Xianxia had recovered around 40% of her strength, she still had injuries that needed to be considered. All in all, her current power was equivalent to a martial practitioner at the Qi transforming 6th-7th stage. But when Fei Chen's situation was even more tragic, he could only use strength equal to that of a practitioner at around the Qi transforming 3rd stage. But in actuality, their true cultivations were vastly different. Xianxia was at the peak of the separation and reunion boundary, her body containing world Qi, while Wen Fei Chun was at the true element boundary, his body containing true Qi. True Qi versus world Qi, they were completely different in nature. The killing power that the former could emit was greater than the later by many folds. Furthermore, Wen Fei Chen's battle experience far surpassed that of Xianxia. So when they exchanged blows, it was Xianxia who felt strained. Although she wouldn't lose immediately, it was just with her strength alone. She would be unable to defeat him. At most, they would be able to fight to a draw. Since both were experts, the battle was very intricate, their figures soaring through the air and landing hundreds of feet away. Kai Yang didn't pay too much attention to Xia Ningchang's battle, because he had his own opponent to worry about. Glancing over at Long Hui, who about 10 feet away, Kai Yang suddenly grinned. "Young Master Long, right?" Long Hui sneered. "Want to beg for forgiveness? It's too late. I have a couple of questions I want to ask you." Displaying an idiotic expression towards Kai Yang, he indifferently said, "If they are your final wishes before death, then I can actually fulfill them for you. Just treat it like so." Smiling, without giving a definite answer, Kai Yang continued, "You really just came for who may heir. That's why you came to kill me, right?" Long Hui's expression faltered a bit, but he quickly recovered and disdainfully replied, "If not, why would this young master come so far and stir up a fuss with you? You think I'm full and have nothing to do." Wrinkling his brows, Kai Yang stated, "But my relationship with Hu Mei Heir isn't even that close. At most, we have only met a few times. Humph, perhaps you have nothing towards her. But that cheap woman feels differently about you." Anger started to appear on Long Hui's face. "For you, she even dared to disobey my grandfather. She has never done that type of action before. Nor has she ever dared to help another male to this extent. Who are you, to actually have ideas on my woman?" "Your grandfather." A streak of maliciousness flashed through Kai Yang's eyes, remembering Long Zaition's capricious strike. That day, if it wasn't for the golden skeleton's ability, assisting him in breaking his limits, then he would have died. "I still have another question." Kai Yang sneered. "How is it that you knew I had left Sky Tower? Since they held the ability to track them all the way here, then they must have started to follow shortly after his departure. If not, then they would have long since lost his trail. In other words, before he even left Sky Tower, he had already been targeted by someone with ill intent." Laughing in a mocking manner, Long Hui replied, "Naturally someone came to inform me, as expected. As for who came to inform me, this master isn't willing to tell you. But I think you know clearly who it was that you offended." Long Hui looked at Kai Yang in contempt, still gazing at him like he was looking at a dead man. Due to this, there was no hint of him wanting to lie, so he explained everything clearly. "As for that new Lang, he was out of my expectations. I met him in a small village at the foot of the mountains." Kai Yang merely nodded his head, since Long Hui had no real reason to lie to him. And because of this, the information must be real, and Nu Lan merely joined them midway. There was no need to think further, after all, he was dead. "This young master has already satisfied your wishes. Now die for me." Laughing out, Long Hui's figure flickered, and he immediately closed the distance between them. Excitement could be seen in his eyes, while the world chi from the chi transformation first stage revolved around his fists, striking out. With every punch, a feathery shape of chi burst out from his fist to attack. Flying, exploding feathers. Earth-grade middle-level martial skill. Since Long Hui was the grandson of Long Zaition, then the martial skills that he cultivated naturally wouldn't be ordinary goods. You could say that even though he was at the chi transforming first stage, his true power enabled him to battle opponents at a much higher cultivation stage than himself. Long Hui wasn't just a white silk young master. To the current Kai Yang, he still posed a threat as an opponent. With the feather's onslaught, Kai Yang hurriedly sidestepped, causing Long Hui's skill to go to waste. This caused Long Hui to have a slight look of shock at the unexpectedness of his ability. In his thoughts, he didn't think that the initial element fourth-staged Kai Yang would be able to dodge his killing strike. Swiftly after, strong and bloodthirsty world chi fluctuations started to disperse from Kai Yang's body. Feeling the density of the world chi fluctuations, Long Hui's expression shifted greatly. How is this the aura of the initial element fourth stage? It was clearly the aura at the peak of the initial element stage. Even the purity and strength could match up to his. This flabbergasting surprise lasted only a moment. Afterwards, Long Hui had already appeared next to Kai Yang with world chi coating his fists. Mercilessly, he smashed downwards towards Kai Yang. Kai Yang dodged aside once again, making the fist hit the ground. Upon contact, dust and rock bits flew into the air. When the dust cleared, a decent-sized hole had formed in the ground. Before Long Hui could rise up, Kai Yang took the opportunity to rush forward. His knee raised high, he aimed a powerful blow at Long Hui's chin. Long Hui's reaction wasn't slow. In one fluid movement, he raised his hand to block the chin strike and pushed down. With his knee locked in, both of their world chis burst out. While Kai Yang was left staggering, Long Hui flew backwards and then used his energy to disperse Kai Yang's attack. After their exchange, both people rushed to stabilize themselves. Looking up and down at Kai Yang, Long Hui narrowed his eyes. It turns out that you have always hid your true cultivation. But no matter, even if this is your cultivation, it isn't sufficient to defeat me. As soon as those words were said, a golden brilliance erupted from Long Hui's feet. His body blurry, he arrived behind Kai Yang in an instant. Golden rainbow steps. Another Earth-grade middle-level martial skill. Drawing support from this wonderful movement skill, Long Hui finally arrived at the hole in Kai Yang's defense. The world chi gathered at his fingertips flew out towards the back of his neck. It was clear that he wanted to kill Kai Yang in one shot. On the verge of death, Kai Yang felt a light breeze on the back of his neck. Reacting swiftly, he tilted his head to the side, just in time to feel a cold rush of world chi draw a line of blood across his cheek. Twisting his body around, the drop of yang liquid within Kai Yang's hands had already morphed into a cicada-thin blood-red blade, aiming directly to the nearby Long Hui. This is a powerful enemy. Kai Yang didn't dare to be clumsy. Any small mishap and he could easily lose his life. As the blade cut towards Long Hui, Kai Yang could see it slicing him in half. But Kai Yang didn't allow himself to rejoice because he could feel that the blade did not truly cut through Long Hui. It was only an afterimage that he had attacked. The opponent's footwork was extremely profound. Reactions not bad. Long Hui's voice echoed from about 10 feet away. Calm and unruffled, he gazed at Kai Yang in amusement. Shaking a bit, Kai Yang suddenly threw the thin blade out. Long Hui didn't dare to stop moving. Activating the golden rainbow steps, he dodged once again. Like a cat chasing a mouse, he looked at Kai Yang with a look of contempt and disdain. Keeping silent, but filled with undying and unwavering battle spirit, Kai Yang's steps were like the wind. In an instant he arrived at Long Hui's side punching at him. Returning without any achievement, Long Hui's figure had already appeared in another location. Humph! Just with your snail pace you actually want to prevail over me? You overestimate yourself. Not sparing his mouth a break, Long Hui immediately started to mock him. He felt that since he was using the golden rainbow steps, his victory was assured. If the opponent couldn't hit him, then how could he win? With his fierce barrage of attacks, he was blandly wasting his world chi away. Waiting until Kai Yang used all of his world chi, he shall then finish it in one strike. With that thought in mind, he decided on his method to take down Kai Yang. He wanted to use the least amount of energy to do so. Slow, too slow. If you can't kill me, then this young master shall go and take that female for himself. What does she really look like? I have quite great expectations, and what amazing sounds she will make when she is being ravaged. This young master just loves to hear the unwilling cries of females being raped. Just thinking about that scene, you can't help but love it. One couldn't help but say, although Long Hui was a white silk young master, he still knew how to word his sentences so as to create a path to unable to dodge Kai Yang's strike. He spoke out proddingly. If it were anybody else, then they would have already long since become thoroughly enraged. Kai Yang seemed to show all the signs of being enraged. His eyes were red and his world chi flared about rebelliously, clearly displaying his fury. But upon closer inspection, you could see the unwaveringness within his eyes, and his heart's thoughts were just as stable as before. After the time it took burn a stick of incense, Kai Yang had already struck out numerous times, yet none of these strikes could touch even a single thread of Long Hui's clothes. Meanwhile Long Hui, who had become parched from all his remarks, was secretly shocked. Reason dictated, after fighting for this long, this kid's world chi reserves should have been long since exhausted. Yet why did none of his strikes weaken in the least? This brat's world chi levels shouldn't be able to support this amount of activity. What Long Hui thought wasn't incorrect. Ordinary initial element stage practitioners would have long since become exhausted from the fighting. But Kai Yang wasn't a normal initial element practitioner, so after fighting an extended bout with him, Long Hui started to have second thoughts about his strategy. While he was reflecting on it, Kai Yang struck again. Every time Long Hui's image would immediately flicker and he would reappear somewhere else. But when he dodged, he felt a fiery hot energy fly at his waist. Looking down, he saw that a hole had been burnt in his clothes. That strike just then had very nearly wounded him. What a pity! Taking a deep breath, the look within Kai Yang's eyes became more excited, mixed with an opposing look of steadiness. This was an extremely contradictory look, yet they merged together perfectly. How could this be? Long Hui's expression changed greatly. That strike was clearly a strike that his opponent had carefully calculated and initiated before he landed. If it weren't for his good luck, then he would have already been injured. But how did he predict where he was going to land? Could it be that, in the time it took to burn a stick of an incense, Kai Yang had already comprehended his golden divine steps? Impossible. He was only at the initial element. Could his eyesight be that good? Next time, even if you don't die, you will suffer severe injuries, Kai Yang coldly stated, looking at Long Hui, his tone conveying his confidence. Your mother's fart, Long Hui bellowed. You want to scare this lord? You're still too inexperienced. Not bothering to reply, Kai Yang continued his crazy attacks. Long Hui was thoroughly enraged. This time he didn't use the gold rainbow steps, but instead directly went to greet Kai Yang's strike head-on. Pung! Their collision sounded. Kai Yang was as steady as a rock, not moving an inch. Meanwhile, Long Hui felt the invasion of world chi into his body and stumbled back a few steps. Crying out strangely, Long Hui didn't dare to meet Kai Yang head-on anymore. Revolving his world chi, he activated his golden rainbow steps and hastily tried to widen the distance between them. So another sound rang out. A crimson-red droplet-shaped object flew out. When Long Hui had just regained his footing, it directly entered his body via the right side of his chest. Screaming out miserably, Long Hui's face paled, clutching his chest. Gasping for breath, bloody foam began to form at his mouth. It can't be! It can't be! It is definitely impossible. His golden rainbow steps had actually been seen through. With Kai Yang's attack already shooting out towards his landing position, Long Hui had no method of avoiding it. Not to mention that the attack was so domineering it caused one's heart to shiver. Not only had it penetrated his ordinary grade lower-level defensive artifact, it had also entered into his body. If it wasn't for his protective layer of world chi, it would have penetrated through to his core. There is nothing impossible. Kai Yang's expression remained cool as he strode forward with quick steps. How could Long Hui dare to stay and fight? Hastening his own steps, Long Hui started to escape towards Fei Chen's position. Hallmaster 1, save me. The current Long Hui was like a frightened stray dog. How could his previous arrogance and steadiness remain? Just as he stabilized his body again, a piercing pain spread out from his back. Long Hui directly fell face first onto the ground. As he was struggling to get up, a large foot landed on the back of his neck. The foot was heavy, like a mountain. Long Hui floundered about on the ground, but not matter what, he could not turn over. I am the grandson of the blood group's Long Zai Tian. If you spare me, I will give you money, give you women, whatever you want I will give to you. If you kill me, not only will it bring you nothing, it will also cause my Long family come and kill you. Not stopping his struggles, Long Hui also repeatedly begged for mercy. Facing the incomparably steady Kai Yang, Long Hui's gaze was one of poisonous compliance. Young Master Long, Kai Yang began. Your blood-curdling screams aren't the least bit pleasant to hear. Yes, yes, yes. Brother Kai speaks the truth. If you don't like it, then I won't shout. When at the edge of the cliff, How could Long Hui dare to not bow his head? Then stay silent forever. Upon finishing, Kai Yang stomped Long Hui's entire face into the ground and used his fist to snap his neck. Ka-cha! Long Hui's neck snapped, his eyes popping out with alarm and remorse. Using one hand, Kai Yang lifted up Long Hui's corpse and hurried to the location of the other battle. A short while later, the figures of Wen Fei-chun and Xianing Chong entered the sights of Kai Yang. Presently, both were evenly matched. Neither was inferior to the other. Of the two people, one had his cultivation sealed, while the other was injured and yet to fully recover her world chi. So she didn't have the ability to display her true power, as such her attacks also suffered a large decrease in power. Even so, this high-leveled battle between experts was far more intense than any other battle Kai Yang had experienced. Figures flickering, they were basically appearing here and there with their world chi bursting out. While the battle situation was extremely dire, Kai Yang stood to the side watching for a while. He knew that if it were one-on-one, then he would have absolutely no hope. But with Xianing Chong it was different. Two-on-one, this was much easier. Looking around, Kai Yang Heart knew what he needed to do. Closing in on Wen Fei-chun, he carried Long Hui's body while shouting out, "Hallmaster 1, come look at who this is." Wen Fei-chun had long sensed Kai Yang's presence, but he didn't dare to probe around. Naturally, he wouldn't know the answer to that question. But upon hearing Kai Yang's question, he turned his head around to look and immediately cried out, "Young Master Long!" The current Long Hui had a large hole in his chest with blood flowing out. His neck was soft and flabby. The bones in his neck had been shattered while his head hung limply, without the slightest bit of life. Long Hui had died. Wen Fei-chun didn't dare to believe his eyes. No matter what, this playful young master was still a chi-transforming first-stage practitioner, right? He also cultivated many martial skills that made even Wen Fei-chun himself drool. So his battle power wasn't small. It was only because Wen Fei-chun had trusted in his battle power that he could calmly allow him to do battle with Kai Yang. But how is he now dead? Shoot! Shoot! Wen Fei-chun whined within his heart. It was okay if the others from the blood group had died, but Long Hui could not die. If he died, didn't it mean that Long Zai-tian would become incredibly furious? If this immortal zone boundary expert blamed him, he wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. In a battle between experts, victory is usually decided within an instant. Long Hui's death clearly caused a ripple within Wen Fei-chun's heart, creating an opening for Xianing Chong. How could Xianing Chong miss this opportunity? Her eyes glinting, hands flashing, her killing strike was launched. Feeling a bad premonition, Wen Fei-chun hurriedly put up some defenses. Unfortunately, he didn't react in time, so he suffered some injuries to his chest. Before Wen Fei-chun could even send out his own counterattack against Xianing Chong, Kai Yang had made his move. Carrying Long Hui's corpse in front of him, he executed a sneak attack from under Long Hui's armpit with a blazing fist. In a timely manner, Xianing Chong further pressured Wen Fei-chun. Stuck in a pincer formation, Wen Fei-chun's posture was very flustered and messy. He was in a very sticky situation. With his current power, he had no way to deal with Xianing Chong. But dealing with Kai Yang was a different matter. Unfortunately, he had despicably used Long Hui's corpse as a shield. No matter how many hundreds of methods Wen Fei-chun possessed, he could not use a single one because of this. In order to injure Kai Yang, he must first destroy Long Hui's corpse, which he definitely wasn't willing to do. "You shameless child!" Wen Fei-chun roared out in extreme rage. While deterring the two's attacks, he also continuously raged. The dead should be respected. By treating young Master Long's corpse this way, aren't you afraid you will suffer the wrath of the heavens? Kai Yang merely scoffed. The one who should suffer heaven's wrath should be you. If you guys didn't force it this far, would things have escalated to such a degree? His rebuttal left Wen Fei-chun speechless. What he said was right. The only reason why these people had come to this mountain valley was to search for some heavenly treasures, provoking no one. While his group had chased them from far away to kill them, a true act of the strong bullying the weak. What right did he have to criticize them? In the midst of the confusion, Kai Yang took the opportunity to finally land a blow. While when Fei Chen busied himself defending against Xianxia, Kai Yang managed to land a hit on his waist. The yang liquid activating, an entire 10 drops were used at once, plunging straight out. When Fei Chen let out a groan, hastily retreating. Great shock and alarm could be seen on his face as he stared at Kai Yang. He had discovered that this youngster's attacks were far more vicious than that female's, and by many folds too. Boiling hot yang qi immediately surged into his body, while a bloody hole had appeared on his body. Although the wound was not too serious, it still wasn't shallow. Frowning, Kai Yang realized that he was still lacking when facing this expert at the true element boundary. 10 drops of yang liquid had been used, yet it still hadn't been sufficient to pierce through him. The true qi within the body of a true element boundary master truly possessed better defensive capabilities than world qi. Careful, junior brother, Xianxia suddenly cried out. At the same instance, Kai Yang saw that a wild killing intent had appeared within when Fei Chen's eyes as he threw himself over. Finally he had reached his limit. He was thoroughly enraged. Or did he actually enjoy being abused? Slowly, the corners of Kai Yang's mouth upturned in an extremely sinister smile. He knew that once he used the yang liquid, when Fei Chen would then go all out to target him. Even if his cultivation was below Xianxia's, the power he could use was many folds stronger than her. If he was Wen Fei Chen, he would do the same thing. Everything was within his calculations. Facing Wen Fei Chen's attack, Kai Yang did not retreat. Instead, he quickly closed the distance. "Don't!" Xianxia cried out. But both were advancing towards each other at high speeds, so it was completely out of her hands. "Stinking brat!" Wen Fei Chen's tone was severe, not bothering to conceal his intentions. Raising his hand, he directly slapped towards Kai Yang. Taking a deep breath, Kai Yang immediately tensed all of his muscles, revolving his world qi to its limit. His bones creaked. A rapid rising in his energy levels turned his skin a crazy red color. Hong! When Fei Chen's palm had landed directly on the corpse of Long Hui. Like a watermelon, it burst, turning Long Hui into mincemeat. This revealed Kai Yang, who was previously hiding behind it. Following straight after, another palm was sent out targeting the defenseless Kai Yang. Currently displayed on the faces of both men were extremely profound smiles. Under the horrified gaze of Xianxia, a simple strike landed on Kai Yang's chest. It was quite obvious that Kai Yang's chest had caved in, evidenced by the sound of bones cracking. Kai Yang spurted out a mouthful of blood, which rapidly turned into a bloody mist that landed on the nearby Wen Fei Chen. How could Wen Fei Chen tolerate a mouthful of blood on his face? His figure flickering, he immediately evaded. But before he could retract his hand from Kai Yang's chest, he saw that despite the pain evident on Kai Yang's face, he was giving him a sneering smile. "Pa!" It rang out. His hands clutching tightly onto Wen Fei Chen's wrist, he breathed in coarsely with his bloodshot eyes boring into him. "You're doomed!" Wen Fei Chen's face changed greatly. He never would have guessed that this brat's vitality would be this strong, or that his world qi's defensive capabilities would be this high. Although his strike had caused Kai Yang to receive grave injuries, it hadn't been able to kill him. But even so, if an average person was able to endure his strike, they wouldn't be able to rebel, so how was Kai Yang still able to use so much power? He actually grabbed onto him and didn't let go? How much strength did he need to have in order for this to happen? "Release me!" Raising his hand, Wen Fei Chen prepared to hit Kai Yang. How could Xianxia give him this opportunity? In her anger, her beautiful hair billowed around her as she gathered all the yin qi within a 10-foot radius. Suddenly, a glistening ice cone appeared in front of her before charging straight towards Wen Fei Chen. Before Wen Fei Chen's hand could fall, it was run through by the ice cone, which made him howl out in pain as blood began flowing out. Roar! Suddenly Kai Yang let out an extremely loud and animalistic howl as a berserk-like world qi energy erupted from his body, becoming more and more violent. The always steady peak initial element stage qi fluctuations had suddenly, under the constant pressure and berserk energy, allowed him to break through to the next stage. Qi transforming stage. This wasn't truly the qi transforming stage. It was only the qi fluctuations of the qi transforming stage. But the current Kai Yang, in terms of strength, wasn't comparable to others. Sensing Kai Yang's change, Wen Feichen was like a block of ice. Exerting all of his strength, he attempted to retract his hand but was ultimately unable to do so, while his other arm had a fresh whole courtesy of Xianxia. With these factors and the pain, it caused him to feel more and more unstable. Ka-cha! It was precisely from this boost in power that Kai Yang managed to snap Wen Feichen's wrist. 10 strands to the heart. How could one possibly stand that type of pain? In any case, Wen Feichen could not bear the pain any longer and the sound of his screams echoed throughout the valley. Another ka-cha sounded out. Wen Feichen's screams became even more tragic. Kai Yang sadistically smiled as he broke 5 of his fingers before pulling him down to kneeling position to break his arm. During this time, Xianxia didn't waste any time. Deeply concerned about Kai Yang's wounds, she mercilessly attacked Wen Feichen's body. The moment that Wen Feichen had landed his blow on Kai Yang, his defeat had already been decided. Kai Yang distinctly understood that, in order to kill this type of expert, he must first restrict their freedom. Otherwise, just by relying on Xianxia and his own strength, they would be unable to win. Since Long Hui had such exquisite footwork, how could an expert at the true element boundary, Wen Feichen for instance, not have something similar? If they allowed him to realize that something was up, then as soon as the sun rose, Kai Yang and Xianxia would be in big trouble. But in order to restrict an expert, how hard would that be? Even if more than half of his current cultivation had been sealed, he still wasn't someone they could easily go against. That's why Kai Yang needed to put his own body in danger. By using his own body as bait, he allowed Wen Feichen to strike him, thus giving him the chance to grab onto his wrist, essentially binding him. This was an incredibly bold move. But since Kai Yang had risked himself as part of the strategy, how could Wen Feichen not fall into the trap? With both his hands destroyed, Wen Feichen was like a hedgehog that had lost its spikes, full of power but unable to use it. Swiftly following his defeat was the rhythmic sound of bones breaking and blood-curdling cries. Under of Kai Yang's hands, Wen Feichen suffered the cruelest torture. In a 10 short breaths time, Wen Feichen's cries had gradually stopped. Even his breathing had become shallow. His entire body was like soft mud, lying limply on the ground. Standing to the side, Xianxia's heart palpitated, like it was her first time truly seeing this junior brother of hers. Even after observing him for more than 2 years, how could Xianxia have possibly seen this ruthless, cold and cruel side of him? Suddenly, 3 smoky black yin chains flew out from Wen Feichen's body. At the same time, 5 other smoky black chains appeared within the valley before disappearing into thin air. Junior brother. He is already dead. Pulling on Kai Yang gently, Xianxia called out to him. The appearance of the yin chains signified the end of Wen Feichen. Is he dead? Breathing rapidly, it was only then that Kai Yang slowly straightened up his waist. Junior brother, you are fine, right? Xianxia's tone was full of worry. Currently, she could sense an evil aura being emitted from all over her junior brother's body, like he was about to step into the demonic path. Kai Yang knew what she was worrying over. Grinning somewhat painfully, he reassured her. Don't panic. This is one of my martial skills. It only looks a bit scary, that's all. Looking closely, Xianxia studied him through her red eyes. Although his eyes looked wild, they still continued traces of a cool calmness, symbolizing that he was still himself. Since all of them are dead, let's go and find the 9 Indu crystals. Kai Yang had yet to forget about that matter. Can you still go on? You suffered such heavy injuries though. I'm still okay, but if we wait any longer, then I'm afraid that I won't be able to go on. Kai Yang said this as he tugged on Xianxia's hand, dragging her to where the yin qi was gathering. As time passed, the amount of yin qi within the valley was gradually becoming thinner and thinner. This indicated the location of the 9 Indu crystals. Arriving at their destination, that treasure was still there. It had been scared away by the 2 battles occurring a couple of 100 feet away. At that very moment, the flower bud was in its last stages, just about ready to bloom. Within the flower bud were drops of translucent crystal like liquid drops, emitting a serene glow. How do we collect them? Kaiyang asked. Xianing Chong whispered softly. Use your yang attributed world qi to do it. Then, contain them within your mouth. I will go do the rest. Remember, you can't use any other part of your body to touch them. Contain them with my mouth? When Kaiyang heard this, he became bewildered. Just as he was about to inquire further, Xia Ningchang's expression became more serious. They have appeared. As those words left her mouth, the flower bud truly began to bloom. Originally, it was the darkest hour of the night, but due to the blooming of the flower, the entire valley area lit up. A single drop of liquid appeared, clear like the fresh morning dew. Floating up, slowing from the flower, it was rapidly spinning in circles. As for the flower it came from, it contained rich amounts of yin qi that all began to coalesce into the drop. It was like a precious stone, splendid and magnificent like a mansion, but it was still emitting an extremely cold aura of yin qi that could cause anyone's heart to beat rapidly. The 9 yin dew crystal had appeared, her hands swiftly forming the appropriate seals. Xianing Chong began to unleash the 9 yin 8 cloud locks once again. In the instant the 9 yin dew crystals revealed themselves, ka-cha sounds were heard in the air, and then a domineering yin qi energy began to form. Under the direction of Xianing Chong, it surged towards the 9 yin dew crystal and tied it down from all directions. Locking that small area down, it had completely trapped that 9 yin dew crystal. Dashing to the left, dashing to the right, no matter where the 9 yin dew crystal dashed, in a 5 feet radius it could not escape. Junior brother, it's your turn. Xianing Chong said this, as she looked attentively at Kaiyang. Even though she didn't care too much about this anymore, considering what they had gone through. But since the treasure was right in front of their eyes, if she could collect it, then she would collect it. Kaiyang nodded his head as he walked over steadily. Although the 8 domineering yin qi locks had blocked off the area, they posed no difficulty for Kaiyang, because the true yang world qi within Kaiyang's body had always been the nemesis of yin qi. Walking into that little secluded place, the 9 yin dew crystal seemed to have sensed Kaiyang's intentions. Due to this, it stayed the furthest possible distance from him, floating in mid-air. Observing it up close, Kaiyang discovered that it really resembled a precious gemstone. It was shaped like a teardrop and was about the same size as a human thumbnail. Use true yang world qi to capture it. How do you do it? Knitting his eyebrows together, Kaiyang thought for a while, before directly using a drop of yang liquid. Using the yang liquid, with a simple thought he turned the drop into a blood-red blade. Casually swinging, he rushed towards the 9 yin dew crystals. The 9 yin dew crystals still wanted to play around mischievously. Darting left and right, it dodged Kaiyang's strike. How interesting! Chuckling lightly, Kaiyang suddenly realized that the many treasures that geniuses possessed all had their own spiritual awareness. But this was the first time he had met one. Secret artifacts that possessed their own spiritual awareness were all treasures without equal. Not wanting to waste time, another drop of yang liquid had appeared within Kaiyang's hands. Once it appeared, he flourished it in an exaggerated manner. Let's see how you escape this time. Attacking from both sides would naturally show results. The red blades were like a fish net, entrapping the prey within. With a flick of his finger, the second drop morphed into a large net. Shooting it out, it wrapped around the 9 yin dew crystal, completely and wholly capturing it. Kaiyang didn't dare to touch it with his hands, and directly brought the net and crystal both into his mouth. Once it entered his mouth, the freezing cold air began to envelop his mouth. Even if Kaiyang cultivated the true yang tactics, he couldn't help but let out a shiver. But in the next moment, another wave of energy that couldn't be seen or felt started to immediately suppress the cold energy. This energy was even more effective, his true yang world qi at the same time. A mysterious attraction force started to come from within his bones, forcibly activating his true yang tactics. With the activation of the true yang tactics, he started to absorb the 9 yin dew crystal's energy into his bones. Sensing this, Kaiyang hurriedly went to stop his true yang tactics. But his reaction speed was still too slow, as he could feel that the 9 crystal within his mouth had shrunk to about half of its previous size, while a unique chilly air could be felt from within his bones before disappearing without a trace. Kaiyang became extremely panicked. This occurrence was completely out of his predictions. Even though he knew, from his various experimentations, that he was able to absorb other types of energy apart from yang qi and store it within his bones, he hadn't thought it would occur without him actively trying to do so. But now, he had absorbed half of the 9 crystal? Not to mention that the speed at which he had done so was quite fast. This object was something that Xianxia needed, so what should he do? Turning his head around, Kaiyang looked over awkwardly. Not knowing how to explain what had just happened, Xianxia had already arrived at his side, bringing with her her natural fragrance. Currently, the cheeks of his little senior sister were bright red, coupled with equally red earlobes. Breathing rapidly, bashful shyness could clearly be seen within those crystal-clear eyes of hers. "Junior brother, please bear with it for a while." Speaking suddenly, Xianxia reached out with her hand and wrapped it around Kaiyang's head. Then she pulled his head down towards her. Her hands were somewhat cool, but felt supple, as if there were no bones within them. They were like a fresh winter snowflake which had descended, giving Kaiyang a chill. Standing on her tippy toes, Xianxia closed her eyes while her long lashes fluttered. Lifting up her veil, her red precious gemstone lips sealed themselves over Kaiyang's mouth. With two soft lips pressing onto his own, a sweet and alluring scent wafted at the tip of Kaiyang's nose. Kaiyang was stunned. At that time, Kaiyang finally realized the reason why whenever he asked questions regarding the 9 crystal, both Treasurer Meng and Xianxia dodged the questions and were so unwilling to respond. Originally, Kaiyang didn't know the root of this dilemma, but everything had suddenly become clear. Between the heavens and the earth, there were thousands of methods to collect things. Each object with spiritual awareness had its own method, while the collection method of the 9 crystal was actually this alluring, this sweet. Two pairs of lips interlocked, causing Kaiyang's breathing to become more ragged. From his throat, a burning sensation started to arise. So hot it was, that even the 9 crystal couldn't suppress it as his blood boiled. Xianxia was in a far worse state. After kissing, she stood there like a Buddha statue, not moving an inch, while her skin was blood red. Not to mention the beating of her heart sounded like the drums of war, as she stood there completely at a loss on what to do. Although Kaiyang did not know the theory and specifics on how to capture the 9 crystal, at the very least, he knew that it wouldn't be achieved if their current actions continued as they were. Not daring to tarry, Kaiyang wrapped his arm around Xianxia's slender waist and pulled her into his embrace. Securing her, he wrapped his tongue around the crystal before prying open her mouth. He then delivered it into her mouth. Stimulated by the cold from the 9 crystal, Xianxia managed to regain a bit of her senses back. Knowing what she needed to do, she accepted the crystal and directly swallowed it. Tasting some sweetness at the tip of their tongues, their two bodies clung closely together. More so with Kaiyang's bare upper body, became more and more sensitive. Being the young, hot-blooded youngster he was, how could he possibly bear this type of stimulation? Basically by instinct, one hand wrapped tightly around Xianxia, while his other had gone to her round buttocks, gently kneading it. Feeling the two soft mounds on his chest, her warmth, Kaiyang's breathing couldn't help but quicken. Carefully and attentively, he maneuvered his hands to wantonly rub those two startling elastic jade mounds. Sounds of moans, full of pleasure, came from Xianxia's mouth. Kaiyang could clearly see her closed eyes open slightly as her eyelashes fluttered. When he realized he was staring at her, he hurriedly continued. Coarse breathing, the bodily interaction, the touching of their tongues, and the lack of mindfulness caused the young male and female to forget their surroundings completely. Each closely hugged the other, wishing that they could merge with each other. Suddenly, Kaiyang's tongue started to hurt, making him scream out in pain. Taking the opportunity, Xianxia pushed on Kaiyang's chest. Nibbling lightly, she escaped from Kaiyang's embrace. "Why did you bite me?" Kai Yang could feel that his tongue had been cut open by the bite, as a bit of blood pooled in his mouth. Clasping her hands on together, Xianing Chang's chest heaved up and down. Breathing in deep breaths, she strived to calm her racing heartbeat, before responding after a while, "I'm sorry. In order to refine the 9 Indu crystal, I need a bit of your pure inborn yang attributed qi and a bit of your tongue's blood. To subdue the 9 Indu crystal, one actually needs some pure yang attributed qi. The purer the better, and because Kai Yang cultivated the true yang tactics, he was the best candidate. And in order to refine it, you needed natural inborn yang attributed qi and the tongue's blood. Natural inborn yang qi was something that couldn't be cultivated. It was something that all males were born with. At birth, males are born with a mysterious energy, and until they had intimate relationships with a female it would remain. Even if it did disappear, it wouldn't have any influence on them. But this energy was needed at certain times. An example was a situation like this. The previous heat that Kai Yang had felt, the energy that had enveloped the 9 Indu crystals cold, was precisely his natural inborn yang qi. That was also the reason why Treasurer Meng was adamant in knowing whether or not Kai Yang was a virgin. It was only virgin boys that still possessed their natural inborn yang qi, and it was only the tongue blood of virgin boys that was usable in refining the 9 Indu crystals. Hearing Xianing Chang say it, Kai Yang touched his mouth and seriously replied, "So it was like this. Is it enough? If it's not enough, I still have more. Isn't it just a few drops of blood from the tongue?" Shy beyond belief, Xianing Chang couldn't help but want to hide in some hole. Nodding her head vigorously, she said, "Enough! 1 drop is already enough." "Oh!" Kai Yang couldn't help but reply with some disappointment. Recalling the touch of her tongue and feeling of her body, he couldn't help but sigh. It was the first time that he had such a close relationship with a female. "Little senior sister," Kai Yang called out hesitantly, his eyes full of burning passion. Xianing Chang immediately became frantic. How could she not be able to hear the underlying wish of Kai Yang's? Replying promptly, "You still have various wounds, so you should go and focus on healing. I also need to refine the 9 Indu crystal." "Oh!" Kai Yang remembered the words she had once said. Once they had obtained the 9 Indu crystal, if they didn't refine it within 2 hours, it would disappear. That's right. This thing. Just as Kai Yang was about to inform her that he had absorbed half of the energy, the world around him started to dim. Losing strength, Kai Yang collapsed onto the ground. His consciousness quickly faded. "Junior brother!" Crying out loudly, Xianing Chang went to support him. Worrying, she checked his pulse. Her expression quickly paled. She had discovered that his pulse was extremely weak. His vitality was at an all-time low. Not to mention that his world qi was incredibly depleted. He was like an extremely dried-up oil lamp. This was no small matter. Xianing Chang's small heart nearly shriveled up. How could it be like this? He was just fine a minute ago, and just then he was doing... How could he faint without any sign? But due to this checkup, Xianing Chang was able to understand the full extent of the injuries Kai Yang had suffered. The wounds on his stomach and shoulder didn't need to be mentioned, as they were already treated and wrapped earlier. But due to the battle, his wounds had opened once more, with blood flowing out profusely. The most serious was the one to his chest. 5 of his ribs had been broken, while a portion of his chest had caved in. Clearly it had injured his lung. That strike of Wen Fei Chen's had contained his fury, so how could it be light? This entire night, it was unknown how many cc's of blood Kai Yang had lost. It wasn't until this moment that Xianing Chang fully understood the monstrous amount of willpower her junior brother had relied on during the night. With these types of wounds, if his position was switched with a normal person, who knew how many times that person would die? While he bit down and held out against the pain and accompanied her to kill that final enemy, and then assisted her to capture the 9 Indu crystal. After completing all of that, once he relaxed his mind, it was of no surprise that he would faint. Placating the anxiety within her heart, Xianing Chang went to take out the remaining pills from within Kai Yang's clothes. Then bracing herself, she forced herself to search Wen Fei Chen's body and found more pills which she then fed to Kai Yang. But Kaiyang was currently in a coma, so how could he possibly swallow those pills? Thinking for a while, Xianxia began to break the pills into pieces before feeding them to Kaiyang. Just as she was busying herself with various things, the 9-8 locks suddenly burst out and disappeared. The sun was up. With the sun brimming with vitality, the 9-8 locks ceiling formation had dissolved. Unbeknownst to Xianxia, she did not sense the passage of time within the mountain valley as she was preoccupied tending to Kaiyang. A wave of tyrannical but soft energy passed over Xianxia's body. Shivering from the sensation, she suddenly looked up, as a figure appeared within her view. Master! As soon as Xianxia saw him, it was like a crack had formed in a dam wall. With her master's appearance, her reliance on him appeared as tears flowed unceasingly down her beautiful face. His face serious, Meng Wuya was about to reprimand Xianxia when he saw that something was not quite right. Looking around, his face became concerned as he asked, "What happened?" Old man Meng had stood guard outside of the 9-8 locks formations for a good portion of the night. He did not dare to enter, as he assumed that the capturing of the dewdrop had gone successfully. After all, he had prepared these things for many years, and all they needed was the corporation of Kaiyang. After that, everything was easy. It was just that his beloved and treasured disciple had to sacrifice herself a bit. After staying outside all night, Meng Wuya was also feeling a bit stuffy himself. Which master would be drugged by his own disciple? Under the heavens, he guessed only he would be. Though that wasn't the reason why Meng Wuya was feeling this way. Being drugged was a small matter, but this time he had lost a lot of face. Not to mention that this trip had brought Xianxia deep into Black Wind Mountains. What if something bad had happened to her? So that's why Meng Wuya was determined to go reprimand Xianxia for her actions. But of course he wouldn't be too harsh on her. After all, this disciple of Treasurer Meng's was treated like his most beloved treasure. But what he was about to say had suddenly disappeared as he gazed down at the ground. On the ground, he saw her panicked and pale face, as she looked at Kaiyang lying unconscious in a terrible condition. "What happened here? Master, I asked you to save him." Bawling anxiously, Xianxia miserably cried out. Meng Wuya did not hesitate. He immediately descended and used 2 fingers to jab at Kaiyang's wrists. His divine sense sweeping across his body, Meng Wuya couldn't help but make a startled face. Such serious wounds? In the eyes of Meng Wuya, Kaiyang's injuries were equivalent to having 1 foot in the grave. His internal chest and external injuries were all secondary. What was most worrying was the extreme depletion of his world qi, as well as the chaotic state of his meridians. In regards to these types of conditions, he must take a special kind of spirit pill. Not only did he have to take a spirit pill, a doctor proficient in medicine was also needed. Meng Wuya had neither of those. "Master, will he die?" Xianxia mournfully asked, full of worry. Once Meng Wuya saw the expression on his disciple's face, he knew something bad had happened. Sighing internally, he cried out, "Fate! Dear fate! Even with my 1,000 blockades, I still wasn't able to stop it." He couldn't bear to have Xianxia saddened. So Meng Wuya consoled, "Don't worry. With me here, he cannot die." As he spoke, he reached into his clothes to take out a bottle. In a pouring motion, he took out a pill that was about the same size as a dragon's eye. It was entirely golden in color, and with one glance, one could tell that it wasn't something of an ordinary grade. When Meng Wuya took out that golden pill, Xianxia's frantic feelings settled down a bit. It was because she knew the tremendous effects of that pill. But Meng Wuya was extremely unwilling. After hesitating for some time, he was somewhat forced by Xianxia. Pinching open Kaiyang's mouth, he fed the pill to Kaiyang. "Let me." Swiping the pill from her master's hand, Xianxia proceeded to put the pill in her mouth. Once in her mouth, she used her tongue to wrap around it, before placing her lips over Kaiyang's blood-red ones. "Hey, hey, hey! This old man is still here." Meng Wuya shouted in his heart non-stop and immediately averted his gaze. Seeing his disciple, without any hesitation or restraint, treating a male in this manner caused Meng Wuya to feel upset. It was like having a daughter whom you spent much effort raising, only to have her leave you. Once Kai Yang took the pill, his color became somewhat better, but the results were not like the expected results. Taking the opportunity, Meng Wuya observed their surroundings. The original hazy gaze suddenly became cold as he saw the corpses of Wen Fei Chun and Long Hui. All of his suspicions disappeared. The reason why Kai Yang had suffered such serious wounds, the reason why his beloved disciple cut such a sorry figure, just like they had engaged in a harsh battle, all had suddenly become clear. A surge of fury burst out from Meng Wuya's chest, as a frosty expression began to form on old man Meng's face. He didn't decide to ask now, for currently it wasn't the appropriate time. The coming days were long, and there would be plenty of time to investigate and make things clear in the future. Meng Wuya was extremely regretful. Regretful that when he had arrived last night, he didn't break into the ceiling formation of the 9 innate locks. Otherwise, how could his disciple and Kai Yang fall into such dire straits? Vexation and remorse filled his heart, before gradually turning into fury, inviting the wrath of the heavens. Taking in deep breaths, Meng Wuya suppressed the fury within his heart and gently asked, "Disciple, did you get the 9 Indu crystal?" N. Xianing Chong continued to look stupidly at the unconscious Kai Yang, nodding her head. "Then go refine it. You don't need to worry for Kai Yang, for this old man is here, so he can't die." Meng Wuya consoled. Hesitating, Xianing Chong finally agreed, repeating, "Master, you must take care to not let anything happen to him. The reason why your disciple is still alive is because he put his life on the line to protect me. If it wasn't for him, then your disciple would have—" Mentioning the last part, Xianing Chong began to cry like a bird again. "Relax." Squeezing out a smile, Meng Wuya nodded his head lightly. Only then did Xianing Chong gather herself again. Drying her tears, she sat down and took out the bag she kept at her side. While she refined the 9 Indu crystal, she also kept an eye on Kai Yang's status. In half an hour's time, the 9 Indu crystal had been fully refined. Though Xianing Chong did not absorb the pill yet, and rather kept it in her dantian. This was because it took a long time to absorb the pill. Once she completely absorbed it, she would be able to break through into the true element stage. But this would take at least a few days. Without Kai Yang awake, Xianing Chong was in no mood to do so. "Let's go. Let's first leave this place." With Kai Yang in this condition, he needs serious medical attention. Bending down, Meng Wuya picked up Kai Yang and along with Xianing Chong, sprinted swiftly towards the edge of Black Wind Mountain. The two people didn't rush straight towards Sky Tower, because the distance between the two places wasn't small. Rather, they had come to the small town that Kai Yang and Xianing had rested at previously. Searching for a tavern in the town, the three people settled down temporarily. Sparing no effort, Xianing Chong labored at Kai Yang's side every day with all her heart, while Meng Wuya gave Kai Yang true qi every day, in hopes of improving Kai Yang's condition. Falling unconscious, Kai Yang discovered that his consciousness had come to a world with nothing. Inside this world, there was nothing. Only the golden skeleton from the Black Book could be found. The golden skeleton sat cross-legged, its golden brilliance shining brightly. Kai Yang also sat opposite it, cross-legged, not moving an inch. Without a sound, without light, Kai Yang sat there observing the golden skeleton. Although the golden skeleton had no eyes, Kai Yang felt that it was also observing him. Time flowed on without any indication. Kai Yang and the golden skeleton maintained this kind of silent situation. Kai Yang was comprehending the mysteries of the golden skeleton. Last time he did so, Kia Yang felt that there were even deeper mysteries regarding it. But despite trying, he was far too powerless at the time. But this time, after experiencing so many life and death battles, Kai Yang felt that the distance between him and golden skeleton had been shortened. If one was to say there had previously been a barrier between Kai Yang and the golden skeleton, then currently that barrier had been removed. His unyielding willpower had conquered the golden skeleton's haughtiness, while the golden skeleton was excited that he had found a suitable master. Suddenly, Kai Yang smiled. The golden skeleton also transformed. Turning into golden streaks of light, he entered Kai Yang, just like the first time they had met. But Kaiyang knew that this time, he had fully gained the support of the arrogant golden skeleton. Previously, when this had happened, he only gained a portion of its strength. All this time it had been observing, examining, until finally, Kaiyang had gained its approval, allowing the golden skeleton to willingly integrate itself into Kaiyang's body. The world of nothingness suddenly collapsed, causing Kaiyang's consciousness to return to his body. In no rush to open his eyes, Kaiyang probed around to learn about his body's condition. The injuries on his body were of no hindrance. It was only the area of his chest which had caved in that still hurt. Apart from that, the sword wounds on his abdomen and shoulder had healed up nicely. Inside his dantian, of the original 40 drops of yang liquid, only a few remained. There was only about 7 or 8 left. The cost of that night's battles was far too high. Just the amount of yang liquid used on Disciple Kai and Wenfei alone numbered around 20 drops. Not to mention the drops used in resisting the cold and the various other battles. But this cost wasn't without rewards. Through these battles, his original initial element 4th stage cultivation had shot up to the 7th stage. To break through 3 sub-stages consecutively, Kaiyang couldn't help but be startled. Thinking back while he was battling Wenfei, he had felt that the energy he emitted was at the Qi transforming stage. It should have been around that time he had broken through. To break through that time caused Kaiyang to fail to notice. If it weren't for his inspection of his body, it would have stayed hidden. This was not the only benefit. He had also accidentally absorbed half of the 9 Indu crystal. At the time, Kaiyang did not know why it had happened, but now all had become clear. That half of the 9 Indu crystal's energy had been stored away in the innermost location within the golden skeleton. When the time came for him to step into the true element boundary, he could then use the 9 Indu crystal to help him refine true Qi. This would allow his true Qi to reach a higher quality. This benefit couldn't be seen currently, but in the future it would reveal its true value. Additionally, any questions that he originally had in regards to the golden skeleton had now been answered very clearly and thoroughly. This golden skeleton of his was able to absorb yang-attributed Qi and any attributed energy. This excess energy would then be stored within his body, which he was then able to access at a later date when he needed it. The stronger his willpower, the more energy he could absorb. Through this, the golden skeleton would be able to bring him even better benefits. It was just that the energy that was given to him by the golden skeleton was of demonic in origin. In other words, as long as he used this energy, his eyes would turn blood red and his body would give off an evil aura. But, due to him cultivating the true yang world Qi, the nemesis of this demonic in energy, he was able to suppress it, allowing him to retain his sense of self. Thinking up to this point, Kaiyang understood the reason why the Black Book would give him the true yang tactics to cultivate. It was to help him defend against that powerful in force, preventing him from losing himself to the demonic path. Everything was clear now. Opening his eyes, Kaiyang heard a series of soft sighs. Shortly after that, the dialogue between Xianxia and Meng Wuya reached his ears. "My dear disciple, your master has expended his utmost effort." Meng Wuya's tone was full of guilt and a bit of unwillingness and regret. These past few days, Meng Wuya would use his true Qi to help Kaiyang heal his wounds. But unfortunately, this aid did little to help him in his recovery. Not to mention the golden pill Kaiyang had taken. Meng Wuya surmised that even if it were not enough to heal his wounds, it should have been enough to allow him to wake up, right? But not only did Kaiyang not wake up, not even a bit of his conscience could be seen. He didn't know what peculiarities were hidden within Kaiyang's body that the golden pill couldn't reveal its raising the dead type abilities. It had only assisted in repairing some of his external injuries before losing all effect. Even the true Qi that he had injected into Kaiyang showed little results. It was like a black hole existed within Kia Yang's body. As soon as the true Qi entered, it was absorbed. How could Meng Wuya know about the miraculous effects of the golden skeleton? Apart from yang-attributed energy, it could also absorb any other kind of energy. Both the golden pill and true Qi, it had absorbed around 99% of their energy, so how could they display their effects? Master. These days, tears could constantly be seen on Xia Ningchang's face. Her eyes were always red. Before she still held hope, but when she heard Meng Wuya speak like that, her face paled. You don't have any other methods? Full of hope, Xianing Chong looked at her master. After all, Meng Wuya's background wasn't ordinary. Those who possessed such strength, if they said there was no hope, then there really wouldn't be any other method in this world. His soul should have been broken and scattered. His expression heavy, Meng Wuya replied, These days, there hasn't been a moment where I could sense his soul or consciousness. Her expression blank. Xia Ningchang's face became whiter and whiter. But don't you worry, he won't die. Hurriedly, Meng Wuya opened his mouth to add, He will just remain in a state of suspended animation. It's just from this day forward, he can't speak, cannot hear, and his body cannot feel anything. If only what? If only we could find some spirit restoration liquid and recover his lost soul. Meng Wuya sighed out this last part. But the spirit restoration liquid. This small place does not have it. Where can you find it? Xia Ningchang's voice suddenly became tranquil. And within that tranquilness there was a note of resolute determination. Seeing her eyes, Meng Wuya pointed his finger up and down her body. Cleverly, she stayed silent, but her gaze remained firm. No matter what, I must obtain the spirit restoration liquid and help junior brother restore his dissipated soul. What are you guys talking about? Just as the two's atmosphere was mournful, a hoarse and weak voice sounded out from behind them. It was basically by instinct that Meng Wuya responded, Talking about your injuries. Saying these words, old man Meng's expression changed greatly. Stiffly, like a machine, he turned his head around and his eyes shrunk back into their sockets as he saw Kai Yang, who was lying on the bed looking back at him with his eyes wide open. Junior brother. Unable to contain her joy, Xia Ningchang immediately rushed up, her long lashes fluttering uncontrollably. An unmistakable sense of joy, and a look full of worry was directed at Kai Yang. Seeing her red, beyond compare, eyes, Kai Yang couldn't help but feel touched. This made him understand that his days of unconsciousness weren't short and that within those days, his situation had caused her a great deal of worry. I'm fine. Kai Yang responded in an unconcerned manner. I just feel a bit empty. Hurry and come look, master. As she wiped her eyes, she went to pull Meng Wuya over. It was practically, I'll drag you over even if you die type of manner, as she pulled her master to Kai Yang's side. Being pulled that hard, old man Meng only narrowly avoided tripping. Full of a woman's duty. A woman's duty. If it weren't because this old man was tough and could take this tormenting, then I would have long since been pulled apart by you. But it was then that Meng Wuya finally regained his sense of self as he sat down on Kai Yang's bedside. His face serious, he carefully checked his condition. After a good period of time, Meng Wuya's brows continued to be knitted together as he muttered to himself, It's impossible. There's no reason. How could it be like this? With every sentence, Xia Ningchang's expression went through great turbulence, thinking that Kai Yang's injuries had only worsened in some way. Master, junior brother, he... Biting on her lip tightly, she quietly asked, her heart in her throat. Oh, since he is already awake, then there is nothing big to worry about. Left at a bit of a loss, Meng Wuya looked at Kai Yang full of puzzlement. Nothing big to worry about? At this statement, Xia Ningchang's face couldn't help but reveal a weird look. Recalling her master's previous mannerisms, it seemed as if her junior brother's injuries were very serious. So how could they suddenly become nothing big to worry about? But this really can't be. Meng Wuya couldn't help but ask, Kai Yang, is this the final radiance before a setting sun? Forcing out a bitter smile, Kai Yang replied, Treasurer Meng, are there people who curse like you? Expression of slander. But earlier your soul had already dissipated. How could it return? Kai Yang's heart shook, and he recalled his unconscious state. It was probably related to when his consciousness was residing within the golden skeleton. Master, you're just a big quack. Her voice full of annoyance, Xianxia angrily stomped her foot. Meng Wuya was embarrassed to death. He had just said that Kaiyang was in a state of suspended animation and needed some spirit restoration liquid in order to recover his soul. But he never imagined that the very next moment, he would recover his consciousness. Isn't this that case of slapping one's own mouth? Losing face is a small matter. Losing his dignity in front of his disciple was a big matter. Meng Wuya felt that he had lost every bit of his reputation already. But not regarding anything else. Kaiyang waking up was a good thing. Although Meng Wuya was afraid of him seducing his disciple, no matter what, if it weren't for him fighting with his life on the line, his disciple would not have survived. Nor would she have been able to obtain the 9 Indu crystal. No matter what, he must remember this act of kindness. Sighing non-stop, the ancient times really didn't allow people to live long. Disasters last for millenniums. Kaiyang had just survived a disaster and now his beloved disciple. So how could he die this easily? While Meng Wuya had worried needlessly. But what should he do in these coming days? Weighed down with worry, Meng Wuya wanted to be decisive in this situation, but was afraid that his disciple would be angry at him, so he hesitated. Kaiyang's awakening allowed Xianxia's tense heart to finally loosen and relax. These days, she hadn't had much rest, as she worried that with this rest, he would never wake up. But now, seeing that he was fine, she no longer held any worries. For the next 2 days Kaiyang was busy healing his wounds, while Xianxia was waiting upon the ever-sighing old man Meng. On the 3rd day, under the order of Meng Wuya, Xianxia finally began the absorption of the 9 Indu crystal, to change her world qi to true qi and assault the true element boundary. He said that even though it had been refined, it wasn't viable to continue to keep it within her dantian. Xianxia didn't disagree. Obediently she refined it. Even after everything, she was still an obedient and clever female. The incident of drugging her master was only a small mishap. Although the 3 people stayed within the tavern, Meng Wuya was a person of high cultivation. Because of this, he wasn't too worried about any suspicious people bothering Xianxia. So he allowed her to enter closed-door cultivation. On Kaiyang's side, there weren't any big obstructions left anymore. Of course, his external injuries and his chest bones still needed a few more days to completely heal. Every day he was meditating and cultivating, waiting for Xianxia's breakthrough before setting off to return to Sky Tower. During this time as Kaiyang was cultivating, Meng Wuya came over carrying a bowling of steaming hot water. Breathing through his nose, Kaiyang smelt an aroma and immediately opened his eyes. Carrying the bowl over, Meng Wuya held it out to Kaiyang. A face full of pain, he said while biting his teeth. "Drink it." Kaiyang also didn't hesitate. Taking the bowl from his hands, he immediately raised his head up and drank it. Smacking his lips, he hiccuped and asked excitedly, "What is this?" Its medicinal effects are so great. He could feel, as the liquid went down his throat, it began to heat up his body. Not to mention that it contained a great amount of energy. A portion went into his body and meridians, helping to heal his wounds, while another portion was being absorbed by the golden skeleton. The corners of his mouth twitching, Meng Wuya replied mournfully, "This old man used the 1,000-year blood spirit as well as many other heavenly treasures. Would you say the effects are great? My lord, these were priceless and you drank it in one gulp. You really have good taste." "The taste isn't bad." Solemnly Kaiyang nodded his head. Taking in a deep breath, Meng Wuya calmed the boiling blood within while he thought, "If it weren't for my beloved disciple instructing me to give it to you help your body, how would I bear to give you any? In a key moment they could be used to save a life. In the entire Han dynasty there aren't many. A home wrecker. Too big of a home wrecker. Do you still have more?" Licking the corners of his mouth, Kaiyang wished for more. Short of breath, Meng Wuya responded snappily, "None. Even if I had more, I wouldn't give it to you. Eat any more, and you might die from overeating." He. Laughing, Kaiyang couldn't help but think, with so many heavenly treasures, I couldn't really benefit from their energy. But with the golden skeleton, I really wouldn't die from overeating. Tell me about the events that happened that night. Asking this suddenly, a long suppressed flash of anger and killing intent flashed through Meng Wuya's eyes. Turning his head around, Kai Yang looked him in the eye. Little senior sister didn't tell you. Those days, she was only focused on your injuries, so I didn't ask. Meng Wuya monotonously replied, while his burning gaze was focused on Kai Yang. Who were the people killed within the mountain valley? Who is it that attacked you guys? They were from the Blood Group and Stormhouse. His expression serious, Kai Yang narrated that night's events, more or less accurately. As for the information regarding his victory over the 9 people, he would naturally avoid the important factors and dwell on the trivial aspects to gloss over what occurred. This feat was far too incredulous, and if he said it out loud, Old Man Meng might not even believe him, might as well not say it at all. Listening to Kai Yang, Meng Wuya became furious. It took a while for Kai Yang finish narrating the events that had occurred. Nodding his head, Meng Wuya asked, in other words, the main offender was you, but the schemer was that Long Hui fellow, right? And it really was me who involved little senior sister. Nodding his head, Kai Yang admitted, although you were the main culprit, you are not at fault. Furthermore, Xianxia is unhurt, so you have need to feel guilty. First consoling him before erupting in a burst of cold chuckles. Blood Group, Long Zai Tian, this old man has remembered you. When he saw the dangerous glimmer within Meng Wuya's eyes, Kai Yang knew that an extremely troublesome matter was waiting for Long Zai Tian. As for matters pertaining to Old Man Meng's background and cultivation, Kai Yang couldn't see through him or understand them in the slightest. But he knew that he was not of ordinary descent. Though, if he really went to stir trouble with Long Zai Tian, Kai Yang would truly be delighted to see it, but not excessively so. Kai Yang had always believed that one must personally obtain their revenge. If Long Zai Tian fell under Meng Wuya's hand, then he would be unable to obtain his revenge. But if that really happened, Kai Yang wouldn't chase after it. He could feel that Meng Wuya had been thoroughly angered this time round. The fire within his heart, without fanning, it wouldn't burn. Staying in the tavern for another 2 days, Xianxia eventually came out of closed-door cultivation. As anticipated, her cultivation had already reached the true element boundary. Asking her in a roundabout manner, Kai Yang found out that you didn't need to fully refine the 9-Indu crystal in order for it to display the desired results. In theory, 1 drop of the 9-Indu crystal was enough to assist 3 people to break through. In all, it was only a catalyst to help with the transformation of world qi into true qi. But there was a peculiar thing. After obtaining it, you must refine it within 2 hours, or it would disappear. So if anyone were to obtain it, it would usually be used by 1 person only. Learning of this point, Kai Yang couldn't help but put down the rock in his heart. Looks like the energy he had taken from the 9-Indu crystal wasn't going to hinder Xianxia's breakthrough. Not to mention, that half portion of the 9-Indu crystal, hidden within his golden skeleton, had yet to disappear like she had said it would. With Kai Yang's wounds healed, Xianxia promoted in strength, the 3 people no longer needed to stay at the tavern. So they packed their belongings and quickly returned to Sky Tower. Treasurer Meng carried Kai Yang as they flew back. On the trip back, he experienced quite a lot of wind and became Wuxia returning to Sky Tower. Kai Yang said his goodbyes to the master and disciple pair before returning to his own wooden hut. Despite leaving for around 20 days or so, his wooden hut was still clean and tidy as always. It looked like Li Yun Tian and the others had continued to keep things tidy. In the following few days, life for Kai Yang continued in its peaceful normality. Cultivating every day, he focused on stabilizing his cultivation. It was just from time to time, the adorable figure of that little senior sister could be seen as she dashed past. After all, she was the first girl that Kai Yang had ever kissed. That sweet and soft feeling could still be clearly recalled. But ever since they returned, Xianxia had yet to make an appearance. It was like she had forgotten the things that had happened between the 2 of them. That night in the mountain valley, before Kai Yang left her to recover, he had made her promise him that if he returned alive, she would grant 1 wish of his. At the time, Kai Yang was only finding a source of motivation for himself, There wasn't anything deep about it. Although he felt a bit disappointed, Kaiyang wasn't too hung up over the matter. I stealthily float by. Waving my clothes doesn't mean a cloud passed by, a kiss strayed by. But because he subdued and caught the 9 Indu crystal, even if both of them were a bit excited at the time, one couldn't clearly say anything about the matter. Both of them were young people, their energy at its peaks, naturally it would be unavoidable. Kaiyang wasn't the type of person to feel inferior due to the gap in their cultivation. Cultivation was a thing that as long as you put in effort, you would naturally become strong. He believed that one day he would surpass this little senior sister of his, surpass everyone of the same generation. Because of the unyielding golden skeleton, his possibilities were limitless. Feelings were something that Kaiyang didn't need to think about. What will be his would naturally be his. What wouldn't be his, no matter how much he forced it, it wouldn't become his. Let things take their natural cause. If Xianxia had feelings towards him, even if his cultivation base was weak, what would it matter? If she really drifted away from him because his cultivation was low, Kaiyang would have nothing else to say. When someone wouldn't feel attracted him, he couldn't possibly blame them that their standards were too high, could he? But, with her lovably simple-minded personality, she shouldn't be that snobbish. Kaiyang was correct on this point. When Xianxia had returned to Sky Tower, she was too embarrassed to go and meet with Kaiyang. Whenever she recalled that night's passionate kiss, she couldn't help but become embarrassed and was unable to show her face. The veil was constantly worn, but no matter what, she couldn't summon the courage to appear in front of Kaiyang. Furthermore, when they had returned, Meng Wuya had instructed her to go into closed-door cultivation. This was to stabilize her new breakthrough and cultivation level. In actuality, he was afraid that Xianxia and Kaiyang were like parted lovers that still longed for each other. Otherwise, with her personality, she would definitely have come over to ask how Kaiyang's health was faring. After cultivating for 2 days, Kaiyang couldn't help but feel unsatisfied with his results. Absorbing yang qi next to coiling dragon stream, the formation speed of the yang liquid was far too slow. It really paled to when he directly absorbed spirit's fruits and the bright yang stones. The yang drops within his dantian were extremely sparse, so he needed to quickly replenish his stocks. Otherwise, if he were to meet another great battle like that one that had occurred in the valley that night, then he would experience the same embarrassment as a clever wife that forgets the rice. Thinking over it, Kaiyang decided to pay Black Wind Market another visit. The first reason was to buy some yang-attributed things to absorb, while the second reason was to buy some 3-leaved Chaos Spirit Flower and Dead Jedi Tree Grass. It had been some time since he last used the incense burner. As for money, Kaiyang had quite a large amount. He was no longer the poor beggar he was before. The money had all been collected from the bodies of the dead blood group disciples. At the time it was too dark, so Kaiyang didn't bother to count how much he had taken. When he had checked the amount after he returned, he had found out that that bunch of people were truly rich. He had only plundered a couple of people, but actually raked in around 22,000 silvers. With this much silver, he would be able to buy 40 bright yang stones. It was enough for him to make up for that night's losses, and also increase the amount of yang qi drops by several fold. At the period when Kaiyang was setting out to Black Wind Trade Market, Meng Wuya appeared with a murderous look. His target, the blood group. Though the blood group was one of the 3 big powers in the area, how could Meng Wuya be afraid of them? His own disciple had narrowly escaped becoming a dead person, narrowly avoided losing her purity. This tab had to be calculated. Long Hui dead? It didn't matter. Didn't he still have a grandfather? If the upper beam is crooked, the lower beams would be too. If it were not for having a powerful backing, how could a small figure such as Long Hui possibly act that domineering and rampant? So in Meng Wuya's eyes, Long Zitian was even more hateful, even more deserving of death. The distance between Sky Tower and the blood group wasn't that far. Furthermore, with Meng Wuya's speed, he had arrived in the time it takes to drink a cup tea. At that very moment, the higher-ups of the blood group were discussing some affairs. This meeting was being held in the Grand Hall. The group head, Hu Man, was currently sitting straight with his tough and stocky build. His face full of harsh features, With a single glance one could tell he wasn't some benevolent person. The subordinates under Hu Man, the fellow hallmasters of the blood group, were all sitting straight, respectfully. These people were currently reporting the small and big matters of the group that had occurred in the past month. The profits, the expenditures, etc. Listening to this made Hu Man extremely impatient. Waving his arms he said, "Don't speak about these trivial matters. How are the result for breaking that mining area's seals going?" A young person of around 27-8 years of age stood up at that moment. Respectfully he replied to Hu Man, "Reporting to the group head, grandfather already has some rough sketches. It's just the number of experts within the group are far too little. Although the seals are old, they aren't easily dispelled. The other day, grandfather had asked Long Jun to pass on the message that he is already making the utmost effort and will try to break the seals in the shortest possible time." The young person was Long Zai Tian's eldest grandchild, Long Hui's elder brother Long Jun. He was already at the true element's second boundary. Although he couldn't be compared to those geniuses beloved by the heavens, his aptitude wasn't too bad. Due to the fact that the Long family's position within the group wasn't low, even though Long Jun was only at the true element's second boundary, he was still given important tasks. And the position of hallmaster. Hu Man merely nodded his head. This is good. Long Jun, if you have the time, please go to the mining site to bring your grandfather my thanks for his troubles. Yes. It's unknown what profound mysteries are hidden within those seals. To be actually hidden tens of feet underground. A random hallmaster spoke out. But this is all thanks to Our Lady May Air and her clear sight. If it wasn't for her saying that something unusual was hidden beneath the mine, then we would have never known about the matter. That's right, that's right. Even though Lady May Air's age is young, her eyes truly are special. It is really unknown as to how she saw this. Hearing the people in the room praising Hu May Air, although their words contained traces of flattery, it still made Hu Man comfortable listening to it. But when he thought of Hu May Air's female body, he would still have to marry her out. At this point, Hu Man couldn't help but sigh. "From your grandmother, your father is wise and strong. Within the family are various concubines, working away every night diligently. Yet how do I only have 2 daughters?" This was one of Hu Man's sore points. As the family's sole male, how would he continue the family? That group of people were still praising Hu May Air's peculiar eyes, and also roped in Hu Jiao Air to the skies. Hu Man was only depressed. When speaking of this point, it was quite odd. The mining site had already been discovered for quite a few years already, while the group had been mining the bright yang stones and the bright yin stones during these years, earning quite a large sum. In these years it had expanded quite rapidly, while a large portion came from that mining site. Yet no one knew that a few tens of feet down, there was such a mysterious thing hidden. Yet 2 months earlier, the Hu Man's daughter had come one day to tell him this news. At the time he had only laughed at the news. It was only under the constant nagging of Hu May Air that Hu Man had very begrudgingly sent people to investigate that area. Hu May Air had clearly stated that this affair couldn't be leaked to the Long family. But Hu Man didn't really care about the news. He felt that it was his daughter's mischievousness to attract his care for her, coupled with the fact that the mine site was under the management of Long Zai Tian. He naturally couldn't hide it from him. The evacuation site that Hu May Air said wasn't that far from the mine. 10 or so blood group disciples painstakingly spent several days before discovering that something was truly unordinary in the place they were digging. It was actually full of seals, so the disciples hurriedly ran to report this to the various elders. After Hu Man received the news, he immediately went to personally investigate. Unfortunately, due to those seals, he couldn't see or hear anything. In the blood group, Long Zai Tian was the eldest, and the one with the most experience. Not to mention he already knew about the matter, so Hu Man put him in charge to see what was actually hidden within those restrictions. Hu Man had a feeling that the thing hidden within was some type of unspeakable secret. If the blood group was able to obtain it, then their power would rise by another level. Not only would their power rise, they would also be able to surpass the 8 great families. At the very least, they would be able to stand on equal footing with them. Hu Man was also a bit vexed. At the time, Humayer had constantly reminded him to not let the Long family know of this news, but he hadn't taken her seriously. Now not only did they know, all the upper echelons of the group knew. After returning from the mining area that day, Human had hurried to Humayer to ask her how she knew there was something hidden below the ground. What he didn't expect was that due to this affair, Humayer had a large argument with him. Through the bustle, Human found out that Humayer found this through the guidance of an expert. It was this expert that discovered the secret in the mine. Because of his mindlessness, he had failed the task the expert had entrusted his daughter. And that expert didn't want the Long family to know of this news. My daughter, what is this expert like? Human held a deep respect for those hidden experts. To be able to see the hidden secrets tens of feet below the ground symbolized that they possessed high cultivations. In Human's mind, that expert definitely possessed heaven and earth-shocking power. What kind of expert? At the time, the image of Kaiyang appeared within Humayer's mind, causing her face to turn red. Glancing at her father, she replied, "Not telling you." Seeing her reaction, Human became rooted to the spot. This made him wonder if his daughter held feelings for that expert. After a series of roundabout inquiries, Human became astonished. This expert was actually a young person. This type of person, how could their birth be ordinary? My daughter, could it be you, like the opposite party? Full of spirit, Human made his inquiries. In his eyes, his daughter would definitely be married, but the most important question was who she would be married to. If she could marry into one of the 8 great families, then it couldn't be any better. Then the blood group would be able to soar up like a phoenix. But this keen-eyed, superior young person wouldn't be so bad either. If I do like him, what can you do? Humayer hiddenly sighed out. If you like them, then try to get closer to them. My daughter is this beautiful. Could it be that he doesn't put you in his eyes? Human egged her on. Wait. Could it be that he already has a wife? What could this be counted as? A man having 3, for wives is very ordinary. Pivoting her body around, Humayer widened her eyes and retorted, "It's because of you that I have failed the task he had given me. How could I have any more face to meet him again?" Humph! Hearing those words, Human could only laugh mockingly. How could he have known that the words his daughter said were actually true? If he knew the truth, he wouldn't have spread out news of this secret. One couldn't help but point out that Human completely misunderstood Kaiyang. If he knew the young expert in his heart was merely a trial disciple of Sky Tower, he wouldn't have enough time to keep Humayer away from him. How would he have the time to let her get closer to him? Gathering his thoughts, Human let out another long sigh. The problems this affair caused really gripped the heart. His little daughter was constantly in closed-door cultivation these past few days. It was the complete opposite of what she liked to do before, going out to play around. There was quite a significant increase in her cultivation, but given her refusal to go out and interact with that youngster, how would she have any chance to marry him? While the various hallmasters below were still bootlicking away. In Human's ear it was nothing but empty words, without any substance. Just as he was standing up to leave, Human stopped in his tracks and lifted up his head. Looking outside, his face couldn't help but turn heavy-looking. In the next moment, all of the hallmasters and elders shut their mouths and turned their heads. A formless aura, like the heavens were falling on their shoulders, pressed down on the shoulders of those present, shaking them to their very core. An expert had graced the blood group. The discussing group within the hall could all feel his presence. Following that, an aged voice sounded next to everyone's ears. "Where's Long Zaition?" This voice was very flat. You couldn't hear any emotion within it. But everyone on site couldn't help but tremble. And they could feel that the expert that had suddenly descended came with some ill intent. Searching for the vice head of the group? Everyone looked at each other simultaneously and couldn't help but hold some doubt within their hearts. "Follow me outside to look." Standing up, Human walked in large strides outside, so the various hallmasters and elders had to follow. Coming outside the room, people saw someone standing in mid-air. That person was an old man who was standing strongly in the air. This person was all white from head to toe. He gave a sinking feeling to everyone. His sharp eyes had swept over everyone, just like a hawk viewing the earth from the sky. His eyes viewed everything with disdain, arrogance, and wildly abandon. When the eyes swept over everyone couldn't help but have a tingling feeling. Peak of the divine movement boundary, Human shouted in a low voice. His rough facial skin twitched slightly. Peak of the immortal zone? Some people were also shocked. Is he the leader of Sky Tower Pavilion? In this surrounding area for a great distance, there are many masters of the immortal zone boundary, but speaking of those at the true peak boundary, there is only the leader of Sky Tower Pavilion who is a mystery. Can be said that it is possible to see a divine dragon, but it is impossible to see the leader of Sky Tower. This old man comes from Sky Tower Pavilion and has a similar age to that of the leader. It is not a mistake that some people will mistakenly say that he is the leader. He is not the leader. Human shook his head slowly. When he was young, he had once seen one side of Sky Tower Pavilion's leader, and he naturally remembered that appearance. It was a completely different appearance to this old man. Moreover, although this person is a immortal zone boundary peak powerhouse, the pressure that was felt by Human was actually stronger than that of someone at the immortal zone boundary peak. Human himself was a immortal zone boundary 7th level powerhouse. So even if the leader of Sky Tower arrived, the pressure will not give him too many restrictions. But this old man was different. When Human looks at him, he feels like he is staring at a mountain which he will never be able to surpass, a river that can't be crossed. Even if he consumed all of his life energy, he will only be able to look up to him. This is a very strange feeling, but Human always believed in his own intuition. This old man is not an enemy. Can't be an enemy. Where did this powerhouse come from? Human very seriously took one step forward. Holding his fist in his other hand and bowing, he asked, "May I know the honored senior's name?" The person who was standing there was naturally Meng Wuya. Meng Wuya had suppressed his anger for a long time. As soon as he returned to Sky Tower Pavilion, he came looking for Long Zai-Tian. Fearing that his disciple will again look for Kai Yang, therefore, he has defended against this for 2 days. When he was finally convinced that she had closed up, then he leisurely came looking for trouble. "Are you Long Zai-Tian?" Meng Wuya asked while narrowing his eyes. His eyes were like those of a hawk which was looking at his prey. Human couldn't help but revolve his yuan qi. It looked like his life was on a thread in this critical moment, but he was able to maintain his composure. After all, he was a master of a group. He had already mentally strengthened himself. If he was frightened by the opposite party's few words, wouldn't it look highly improper? This one is Blood Group Hallmaster Human. He does not know the senior. Human, after a few words, was interrupted by Meng Wuya. With an impatient expression, he asked, "If you are not Long Zai-Tian, why are you opening your mouth then?" Human was startled by this but is wise enough to not get angry suddenly. When Human was again about to open his mouth to explain something, Meng Wuya became crazy. "Fuck you, Long Zai-Tian. You old dog, roll out in front of this old man." This roar was an indescribably real-world tragedy. It rang out past the clouds, penetrated deep into the earth. Not only was heard by Blood Group, but was also heard by people from the Storm House and Sky Tower Pavilion. With this single roar, everyone became quiet. A crowd of Immortal Zone Boundary, True Element Boundary Powerhouse were looking at Meng Wuya with silly expressions. They were staring at him with wooden expressions, with dumbfounded stares. They would have never thought that a powerhouse can curse a person with his full power. Moreover, his cursing was done in such an evil and vulgar way. Your demeanor? Your status? As long as he is an expert with a little strength and prestige, will he do such a thing in public? If he is doing such a thing, he should have a very big enmity with the other party, letting his training and demeanor be thrown beyond the highest heavens? What did that Long Zai-Tian do for calling this much anger towards himself? But with the shout of Meng Wuya, various people from the Blood Group clearly felt that a grim future lay ahead of them. Human asked with a calm face, "Senior, please. If you have words to speak, I will listen to them." Although the strength of this person was very high, Human doesn't want him as an enemy. However, Long Zai-Tian is after all the vice hallmaster of the Blood Group. Meng Wuya's palm came halfway towards Human. "You stand still. Long Zai-Tian, roll out to me. If he doesn't come out and cut his own head off and marry it to a chamber pot, This old man will slaughter the whole of your blood group, Meng Wuya stated threateningly. He was unable to see the culprit, so he was very annoyed in his heart. The blood group, it is nothing in his eyes. The look on Hu Man's face was like that of a red chili. Even the clay dolls have much less hot color on their face, much less compared to the current hot-tempered Hu Man. If not for the fact Meng Wuya's strength was so strong, why would he speak so politely with him? But Meng Wuya is simply not giving him face. Hu Man loses his temper. Hey! Is that Long Zaition a turtle? Doesn't he dare to come out and meet the old man? Meng Wuya said while sweeping his eyes towards the people standing under him. This time, it is actually a youth who responded with a cold face. This Mister, watch what you are saying? My grandfather, and you have what enmity? Why are you insulting him like that? The person who spoke is Long Jun. Meng Wuya came and is scolding Long Zaition with such coarse and vulgar language. Long Jun is after all a descendant of Long Zaition. How much can he endure? Taking advantage of the fact that this place is Blood Group's headquarters, numerous masters are standing beside him, he took the opportunity to refute Meng Wuya immediately. So what if he is a peak Immortal Zone boundary powerhouse? The Blood Group also has masters of the Immortal Zone boundary. If he dared to start a fight here, it will be decided that you will never return from here. Your grandfather? Meng Wuya narrowed both his eyes and stared at Long Jun. The person who this mister is trying to find is my grandfather. Long Jun gave a sound reply. It's very good. Meng Wuya smiled. A dragon will live like a dragon, the phoenix will live like a phoenix, and at birth the mouse will be digging holes. That Long Hui was not a good thing, so you as his elder brother wouldn't be that high quality either. How did Long Hui come into this conversation? The surrounding people thought that this old man said something unconsciously. Such a random word, what does he want to say? Long Jun became angry. Old man, you are acting too wild. This is Blood Group, so it's not a place where you can act wild.